The Zoom call had been going perfectly. 20 minutes into my interview with Morrison Tech, I was nailing every question. The hiring manager was nodding, the team lead was smiling, and I could feel my 5 years of grinding through night school while working 2 jobs finally paying off. Then my brother Blake unmuted himself from my computer. I'd made one mistake, leaving my laptop open while I grabbed my portfolio from the other room. 30 seconds. That's all it took for Blake to sneak into my room and join the call from my device. "Excuse me," his face appeared in a second window, poorly lit and smirking. "I'm Blake Harrison, Natalie's brother. I feel morally obligated to warn you about who you're interviewing." My blood turned to ice. "Blake, get off." "She's mentally unstable," he continued, talking over me. "Violent outbursts, pathological lying, severe personality disorders. Our family's been dealing with her issues for years. She's on multiple medications and has been in and out of treatment facilities." The interviewer's faces changed, from engaged to concerned to horrified. I watched my future dissolve in real time. "That's not true," I said, my voice cracking. "None of that is true. This is." "See how angry she gets?" Blake said smoothly. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. She can seem normal for short periods, but the mask always slips. I couldn't let you hire her without warning you. It's a liability issue, really." "Mr. Harrison," the hiring manager said slowly, "this is highly inappropriate. I have documentation," Blake lied with practiced ease. "Medical records, police reports, testimonies from previous employers about incidents. I can send them over if he'd like." "He's lying," I said, but I could hear how desperate I sounded. How crazy it must look, a family member going to these lengths to warn them. Who would believe me over him? "We've heard enough," the team lead said. "Ms. Harrison, we'll be in touch if we need anything further. Thank you for your time." The call ended. Just like that. 5 years of work destroyed in 3 minutes. I sat there, staring at the blank screen, listening to the sounds from downstairs. Laughter. Actual laughter. They were celebrating. I walked downstairs to find my entire family in the living room, champagne glasses raised. They'd been watching on Blake's phone, broadcasting my humiliation like a sporting event. "He saved the company from you." Dad cheered, clapping Blake on the back. "That's my boy, looking out for the greater good." "Heroes protect others from parasites," Mom added, raising her glass. "Blake's a hero. That company should thank him." My sister Meredith was already posting about it online. "My brother just saved a company from making a huge mistake. Not all heroes wear capes. Hashtag family first, hashtag truth matters." "Why?" was all I could manage. Blake shrugged, still grinning. "You really thought you were going to get a job that pays more than mine? After all the years of acting like you're better than us, this is what you get for thinking you're special." "I worked for that interview for months. And I destroyed it in 3 minutes," he said proudly. "That's the difference between us. You work. I win. Besides," Mom said, sipping her champagne, "you should be grateful. Now you can stop pretending you belong in tech and focus on finding a nice retail job. Something more appropriate for your abilities. Or better yet," Dad suggested, "maybe this will finally convince you to move out. 23 and still living at home, still trying to be something you're not. It's embarrassing." I looked at them, really looked at them. My family celebrating the destruction of my dreams like they'd won the lottery. Blake, 26, who'd been fired from 3 jobs for harassment, but somehow always landed on his feet because Dad knew people. Meredith, 24, who'd never worked a day in her life but called herself an influencer with 200 followers. My parents, who'd spent my college fund on Blake's DUI lawyers and Meredith's failed boutique, then told me I wasn't college material anyway. "Thank you," I said quietly. They stopped laughing. "Thank you, Blake, for showing me exactly what you all are. And for doing it on camera." His face went pale. "What camera?" "The Zoom recording," I said. "Morrison Tech records all interviews for quality and legal purposes. It's in their interview confirmation email. The one you didn't read when you decided to commit defamation of character, tortious interference, and criminally access my computer." "You're bluffing," Blake said, but his voice wavered. "Am I? You illegally accessed my device, joined a private business meeting, and made false statements about my mental health to destroy my employment opportunities. On a recorded call, with witnesses. That's a felony in this state, Blake." He was protecting them. Mom shrieked. From what? A qualified candidate with 5 years of clean experience, or from the embarrassment of someone in this family actually succeeding without nepotism? I pulled out my phone and started typing. Morrison Tech's legal team is going to love this. So will the police, and the 5 other companies I'm interviewing with this week, especially when they hear about the harassment campaign my family is running. You wouldn't dare, Dad growled. I would. And I will. Unless. Unless what? Blake asked, champagne forgotten. Unless you record a retraction. Right now, admit you lied. Say I have no mental health issues, no criminal record, no instability. Admit you accessed my computer illegally out of jealousy and tried to sabotage my career. Never, he spat. Then I'll see you in court. And prison. White-collar crime units love cases like this. Video evidence, financial damage, cybercrime. You'll be famous, Blake, the brother who went to jail for sabotaging his sister's job interview. That'll look great on LinkedIn. The room exploded. Shouting. Accusations. Mom sobbing about family loyalty. Dad threatening to throw me out. But Blake? He was silently Googling unauthorized computer access charges, his face straining with each result. Fine, he muttered. I'll do it. Blake, no. Meredith gasped. You can't admit to lying. What about your reputation? What reputation? I asked. The one where he got fired from Jackson and Associates for sending explicit photos to an intern. Or from Clearwater Solutions for stealing equipment? Or from Technova for failing a drug test? How do you? I keep records. You bragged about your conquests and cons. I kept receipts for protection. You kept them for ego. He recorded the retraction through gritted teeth, admitted everything while our parents watched in horror. Not horror at what he'd done. Horror that he got caught. That there were consequences. That, for once, I was in control. I backed up the video to cloud storage, emailed it to myself, and sent it to a lawyer friend who had helped me understand my rights. Then I packed my things, not much, since they'd made sure of that, and left. Where will you go? Mom cried after me. You have nothing. No job, no money, no family. I have integrity, I said. That's more than any of you can claim. That night, I checked into a cheap motel and sent 2 emails, one to Morrison Tech's HR, attaching the video and explaining everything. The other to every tech company within 50 miles, with my resume and a brief cover letter about overcoming sabotage and staying the course. Responses came faster than I expected. Morrison Tech called the next morning. The hiring manager was stunned and apologetic. In 20 years, I've never seen anything like this. The fact that you handled it so professionally, knew about our recording policy, and got a retraction? Would you be open to coming in, just with our team this time? I got the job, started 2 weeks later. The salary alone made Blake's look like spare change. But I wasn't done. Blake's stunt made something painfully clear. My family didn't just want me to fail. They needed me to fail. My success threatened their entire narrative, that I was the weak one, the failure, the one who needed their control. So I decided to succeed loudly. I volunteered for every tough assignment, asked questions, showed up early, stayed late. Within 6 months, I was promoted. Within a year, I led my own team. Meanwhile, Blake's life unraveled. Turns out when you admit to cybercrime on video, people Google you. His company saw the clip. I may have made sure it ranked high, and fired him. Quietly. But the industry whispered he was blacklisted. Meredith's influencer career crumbled when screenshots leaked of her mocking my situation. Brands dropped her. Partnerships vanished. She became just another bitter 20-something living with her parents. Mom and Dad didn't escape either. Their church circle was scandalized, thanks to a little help from my aunt, who always saw through them. They went from bragging about their 3 successful kids to being known as the couple who raised a criminal son and helped him ruin his sister's future. Only, I wasn't ruined. I was just getting started. The best part came a year later. Morrison Tech was acquired by a major tech giant, and they promoted me to senior developer as part of the transition. The announcement included a feature story about my journey, overcoming family sabotage to become one of their rising stars. Blake saw it, of course. He was working at a cell phone store by then, telling anyone who'd listened that the tech industry was all politics and he'd been blackballed for telling the truth. He messaged me, "You ruined my life." I responded, "No, you ruined your own life. I just made sure everyone could see it." He tried one last desperate play, creating a blog post titled, "My sister destroyed our family for a job." It was a masterpiece of delusion, painting me as vindictive and him as a concerned brother trying to protect innocent employers. I countered with my own post, "My brother committed a felony to stop me getting a job," complete with a Zoom recording, his retraction, screenshots of his previous firings, and a breakdown of the actual laws he'd broken. Mine went viral. His got him sued by Morrison Tech for defamation. The lawsuit bankrupted him. Mom and Dad spent their retirement savings on his legal fees only for him to lose spectacularly. The judge called his actions malicious, premeditated, and indicative of severe character defects. During the trial, more came out. Other people Blake had sabotaged over the years. Coworkers he'd undermined. Friends he'd betrayed. A pattern of destruction that my parents had enabled and celebrated as long as it wasn't directed at them. Now it was. With no money for lawyers, no reputation to trade on, and no children willing to support them, my parents lost their house. Blake moved back in with them, into a one-bedroom apartment where his hero status meant nothing and his protection of companies from me had cost them everything. I bought a house last month, nothing fancy but mine. In my home office, I have a framed screenshot of that Zoom call. Blake's face frozen mid-lie, the interviewers looking shocked, me looking devastated. It reminds me that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually gifts. Blake thought he was destroying my future, but he was actually freeing me from the weight of pretending they were family. He called me a parasite who needed to be stopped, but parasites feed off others' success. I built my own. They're the ones who needed me to fail to feel good about themselves, who fed off my setbacks, who couldn't survive in a world where I thrived. He said heroes protect others from parasites. He was right about that too. I protected the world from them, from Blake's lies, Meredith's toxicity, my parents' enabling. I made sure everyone could see what they really were. The interview he crashed, it launched a career beyond my dreams. The family he was protecting me from, they're protecting each other now, in their shared apartment, blaming me for consequences they created. The parasite he exposed, she's thriving, growing, succeeding in ways that make his protection look like what it really was. Jealousy dressed up as concern. Heroes don't destroy opportunities, they create them. Heroes don't lie about mental illness, they support those who struggle. Heroes don't celebrate others' failures, they lift people up. Blake was no hero. He was just a man who couldn't stand to see his sister succeed, and in trying to destroy me, he revealed himself to the world. Thank you, Blake. Your 3 minutes of heroism gave me a lifetime of freedom. I hope it was worth it.
The soft glow of my phone screen cut through the bedroom darkness at 1:22 a.m. I blinked, trying to make sense of the time, then saw it wasn't my phone at all. It was Philip's, lying face down on his nightstand, its light pulsing faintly from beneath. A text message. My eyes, still heavy with sleep, registered the name. Mom. Quick pause here. Let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments. My mother, Julia, texting Philip at 1:22 in the morning. My first thought was a shrug. Maybe she'd had a nightmare. Maybe she'd forgotten the time. She was 60 after all, and sometimes her internal clock went a little haywire. Philip, my husband of 5 years, was 38 and a heavy sleeper. He didn't stir beside me. I rolled over, pulling the duvet tighter, and tried to go back to sleep. My name is Mackenzie, and at 36, I've spent most of my life trying to ignore the little red flags that pop up around Julia. It's easier that way. But then it happened again, 2 nights later. This time I was still awake, reading an article for a food writing gig. 12:57 a.m., the same faint glow from Philip's nightstand. Again, Mom. This time the shrug felt forced. A tiny cold knot began to form in my stomach. Julia was a lot. She'd always been a lot. My earliest memories of her were laced with a peculiar kind of criticism, delivered with a smile. "He's too good for you, Mackenzie," she'd say about a high school boyfriend, then later about Philip. "You never put enough effort in. Look at your hair." She'd make it sound like a loving concern, but the words always landed like tiny, poisoned darts. Over the years, those darts had chipped away at my confidence, leaving me with a persistent hum of self-doubt. Philip, bless his heart, was the kindest man I knew, a natural people-pleaser, almost to a fault. He'd always tried to smooth things over with Julia, to be the bridge between her sharp edges and my increasingly brittle patience. I'd always appreciated it, saw it as him protecting me. Now, I wasn't so sure. I pretended everything was normal. I made coffee, we talked about our days. I asked Philip about his work. He was a software engineer, methodical and predictable. Nothing seemed out of place, but the knot tightened. We had a shared iPad in the living room, a relic from when we first moved in together. We used it for recipes, streaming movies, sometimes checking shared calendars, and it synced iMessages. I waited until Philip left for work. My hands were a little shaky as I picked up the tablet. It felt like I was doing something wrong, invading his privacy, but the alternative, living with that cold knot of suspicion, felt worse. I navigated to the Messages app. My thumb hovered over Julia's contact. I took a deep breath. The conversation history wasn't long, but it was frequent, and it wasn't about nightmares. It was about money. My eyes scanned quickly, my heart starting to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. There were vague references to expenses, bills, urgent needs. And then I saw it, stark and chilling, a message from Julia, time-stamped just hours after that first late-night text. "I need the money before Friday." "She can't know." The message, "I need the money before Friday. She can't know," burned itself into my retinas. My breath hitched. It wasn't a nightmare. It was a secret that involved my husband and my mother. The cold knot in my stomach solidified into a hard, painful lump. I closed the Messages app on the iPad, placed it back on the coffee table, and walked away, trying to appear calm, trying to breathe normally. For the next few days, I moved through my life in a fog. I cooked, I wrote, I laughed at Philip's jokes, but my mind was a frantic supercomputer, running simulations, replaying every interaction. I didn't confront him. Not yet. The self-doubt that Julia had so carefully cultivated over decades whispered in my ear, "You're overreacting. You're imagining things. You're jealous." But the evidence on the iPad was too stark. Instead, I started my own quiet investigation. I waited until Philip was at work, or asleep, or in the shower. I'd pick up the iPad, or sometimes, when he left his laptop open, I'd check his browser history. It felt dirty, invasive, but the alternative was letting this fester, letting Julia's insidious influence continue to rot my marriage from the inside out. The messages weren't just recent. Scrolling back, I found them stretching for months, almost a year in fact. Regular requests, always around the same time of the month, always with an underlying urgency. Sometimes it was a vague medical bill, other times urgent utilities. Never a specific amount in the text, just the demand for the money. Then I found it, tucked away in Philip's cloud storage, a file I'd never noticed before, Household Budget, Q3. I clicked it open. It was an Excel spreadsheet, meticulously organized, as Philip always was. And there, under a category labeled Miscellaneous, were recurring entries. $2,200. Julia. Utilities, medical. Every single month, for the last 11 months. $2,200. My stomach lurched. That was a significant chunk of our disposable income. Money we talked about saving for a down payment on a bigger place, or for a long-delayed trip to Italy. My mother, Julia, was siphoning money from us, from Philip. The anger was a slow burn, but it was there. And then, a new layer of betrayal. In one of the older message threads, Julia had written, "I told my therapist about your support. She says it's good you're helping me through Mackenzie's emotional withdrawal. It's been so hard since she pulled away." My blood ran cold. Emotional withdrawal? She was telling Philip she was seeing a therapist, because I was emotionally withdrawing, and that was her trauma. It was a classic Julia move. Spin the narrative, make herself the victim, and use it to justify her demands. And Philip, my kind, conflict-avoidant Philip, had clearly bought it. He was a peacekeeper, always had been. He'd rather pay the money, endure the late-night texts, than face Julia's wrath or cause a family disruption. He was deceiving himself, believing he was helping, when he was just enabling. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who wasn't in the family. Someone who could see clearly. I called Freya. Freya Brown, my best friend since college, was a no-nonsense marketing manager in her early 30s, sharp as a tack and brutally honest. "She's doing what?" Freya's voice was a low growl through the phone. "Mackenzie, this isn't just mom being mom. This is financial abuse. And Philip, he's complicit." We talked for hours. I laid out everything, the late-night texts, the "she can't know," the Excel sheet, the therapist lie. Freya listened patiently, occasionally interjecting with a sharp question. "You can't just blow up," she advised. "She'll turn it around on you. You need proof, undeniable proof, and you need a plan." Her words resonated. This wasn't about a screaming match. This was about something deeper, something that had been festering for years. This was about liberation. Over the next few days, I meticulously transferred every single relevant message, every screenshot of the Excel sheet, every bank statement detail I could find, into a secure, encrypted folder on my personal cloud drive. It was a digital archive of betrayal. As I was cross-referencing one of the older message threads, a name popped up that stopped me cold. It wasn't Philip. It was another initial. Wait, why are there messages from Julia to someone labeled A? Wait. Why are there messages from Julia to someone labeled A? My finger hovered over the contact. A. It could only be one person, Annalise, my younger sister, 32 now, 4 years my junior. We hadn't spoken in years, not really. Not since she'd left for college, then barely looked back. Our relationship had always been complicated, strained by Julia's constant comparisons. Annalise, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was always too sensitive, too emotional. When Annalise had finally cut ties, it felt like she was cutting ties with the whole family, including me. I'd always wondered if she thought I was in on it, part of Julia's manipulative orbit. The messages to A were similar to Philip's, though less frequent and older. Requests for money, veiled threats about family reputation, hints of disappointment. My stomach twisted. Had Julia done this to her too? I needed to know. I found Annalise's old email address, the one she'd used before she went fully off-grid from the family. I crafted a careful message, vague enough not to give away my suspicions, but direct enough to pique her curiosity. "Annalise, it's Mackenzie. I need to talk to you about Mom. Something important. Please, just meet me for coffee. No one else needs to know." I didn't expect a reply, but a day later, one popped up. "Where and when?" Short, to the point, just like Annalise. We met at a small, independent coffee shop tucked away on a side street, far from our usual haunts. I arrived first, nursing a lukewarm latte, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm. When Annalise walked in, she looked exactly the same, yet entirely different. Her fiery red hair was still a vibrant shock, but her eyes held a weariness I hadn't seen before. She was thinner, sharper, and there was a guardedness about her that made me realize how much time had truly passed. "Mackenzie," she said, her voice flat as she slid into the seat opposite me. "What's so urgent?" I didn't waste time. "Mom, she's been taking money from Philip, thousands a month, for almost a year." Annalise's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Figures," she muttered, a bitter edge to her voice. She tried the same with me. My breath caught. "She did?" "Yeah. Right after I graduated college. Said there were family debts from Dad's illness that I needed to contribute to keep the house. Said if I didn't, she'd have to sell it and we'd all be homeless. Guilted me into draining my savings. Every penny I'd earned from my part-time jobs." Her voice was low, laced with a resentment that had clearly simmered for years. Then, when I finally pushed back, when I said I couldn't afford to send her any more, she turned the whole family against me. Said I was selfish, ungrateful. Said I'd abandoned her when she needed me most. Said I was just like Dad, running away from my responsibilities. A wave of nausea washed over me. This was it. The confirmation. The shared story of manipulation, of Julia's insidious tactics. Annalise had been the golden child, but even golden children could be bled dry. I didn't know, I whispered, feeling a profound shame. "I thought you just left. It was easier to leave than to fight her," Annalise said, her gaze fixed on her coffee cup. "She makes you feel crazy, doesn't she? Like you're the problem." She told Philip she was seeing a therapist because of my emotional withdrawal, I confessed, the words tasting like ash. Annalise snorted. Classic Julia. She told me I was abandoning her, and that's why she was having panic attacks. She uses whatever she can to get what she wants. She tried the same with Greg, too. My eyebrows shot up. Greg, Annalise's husband, was a private man, incredibly supportive of Annalise, but I never imagined him getting caught in Julia's web. She tried to get money from Greg? Annalise nodded, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "Oh, yeah. She called him up, spun him some story about a medical emergency and how she needed money for a procedure. Greg listened, then he told her, very calmly, that if she ever called him again asking for money, or if she ever tried to manipulate Annalise again, he'd call the police and report her for attempted fraud. Said he had all her calls recorded. She never called him again." The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a shared silence, a quiet understanding. The awkwardness between us, built up over years of estrangement, began to crack, replaced by a fragile new connection, bonded by betrayal. Annalise, my fiery, resentful sister, had thought I was in on it. Now maybe she was starting to see. The coffee shop meeting with Annalise had been a revelation. It wasn't just Philip. It wasn't just me. Julia's web of manipulation extended far wider than I'd ever imagined. The anger I'd felt earlier, a slow, simmering burn, now ignited into a focused, determined flame. Freya's words echoed in my head. "You need proof. Undeniable proof. And you need a plan." My plan began to take shape over the next few days. It needed to be public, undeniable, and impossible for Julia to spin. It needed to expose her for what she was, not just to Philip and me, but to the wider family, and it needed to happen on my terms. I decided on a family lunch, the pretense, an early anniversary celebration for Philip and me. Our actual anniversary was still a few months off, but it was a plausible enough reason to gather everyone. Philip, of course, was delighted. He loved family gatherings, saw them as a chance to smooth over any lingering tensions, to play the dutiful son-in-law. He had no idea what was coming. I sent out the invitations. Julia, naturally, was the first on the list. Then Philip's parents, though they were out of town and couldn't make it, which was fine by me. I needed the focus to be on Julia. Then Mara. Mara Harding, my cousin, was in her late 30s, just a couple of years older than me. She was the family gossip, the one who knew everyone's business. And crucially, she had a notoriously unstable relationship with Julia. Julia loved to confide in Mara, to spin her tales of woe and victimhood, knowing Mara would spread them like wildfire. Mara would be an unwitting but essential witness. And then, the secret guest, Annalise. I called her a few days after our coffee meeting. "I'm planning a lunch," I told her, my voice steady. "I want you there, for Mom's benefit." There was a long pause. "What are you planning, Mackenzie?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Justice," I replied. "And I need you as a witness, and a participant, if you're willing." Another pause, then a sigh. "Okay, count me in, but I'm bringing Greg." "For moral support, and because he's got a few things to say to her, too." "Perfect," I said. Greg Ford, Annalise's husband, was a quiet, imposing presence. His presence would add an undeniable weight to the proceedings. The day of the lunch arrived. I'd booked a private room at a mid-range Italian restaurant, somewhere familiar enough not to raise suspicion, but public enough to feel formal. I arrived early with Philip, fussing over the table settings, making sure everything looked innocent. Philip, oblivious, helped me arrange the flowers. He truly was a good man. Just blind. Or maybe willfully blind. Julia arrived, dressed impeccably, a charming smile plastered on her face. She hugged Philip tightly, then gave me a perfunctory squeeze. "Darling, so sweet of you to do this for your anniversary," she cooed, her eyes already scanning the room, assessing who else was there. Mara arrived next, a whirlwind of bright colors and nervous energy. She hugged me, then Julia, her eyes darting between us. She was already sensing something was off. Finally, Annalise and Greg walked in. The air in the room thickened. Julia's smile faltered, replaced by a look of shocked disbelief. Annalise, the prodigal daughter, the one who had dared to defy her, was here. And she was with Greg, the man who had threatened to call the police. "Annalise," Julia said, her voice a strained whisper. Annalise gave her a tight, polite nod. "Hello, Mom." We all took our seats around the large, round table. Philip, Julia, Mara, Annalise, Greg, and me. The atmosphere was a fragile truce, a thin veneer of civility stretched over years of unspoken resentments. Julia, ever the performer, cleared her throat, ready to take center stage. "Well," she began, her voice regaining its usual theatrical lilt, "before we start, I just wanted to say how wonderful it is to be here, celebrating Mackenzie and Philip's—" "Actually, Mom," I interrupted, my voice calm, cutting through her practice monologue. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. "Before we do anything, I have something for everyone." I reached under the table and pulled out a stack of custom-printed folders. One for Philip, one for Julia, one for Mara, one for Annalise, and one for Greg. Each folder was crisp, professional, and contained a carefully curated selection of screenshots. The late-night texts, the Excel entries, the messages to Annalise, the therapist lie, all dated, all undeniable. I handed them out one by one. Philip looked confused, then curious. Mara's eyes widened as she took hers. Annalise and Greg exchanged a knowing glance. And Julia's hand trembled as she took the folder. Her eyes flickered from my face to the folder, then back again. She didn't even open it fully. Just the first page, where the words, "I need the money before Friday. She can't know," were clearly visible, followed by the "Julia, Utilities or medical. Excel entry. Her face drained of color. Her lips started to tremble. Before anyone could read more than 3 texts, Julia let out a strangled sob, a theatrical, gasping sound that was meant to elicit sympathy, to derail the proceedings. She clutched the folder to her chest, her shoulders shaking. Annalise leaned in, her voice cutting through the sudden silence, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "You don't get to cry yet." Julia's sob echoed in the private dining room, a performance honed over decades. Her shoulders shook, her face buried in her hands, the folder with its damning evidence clutched to her chest. It was a classic move. Play the victim, deflect, gain sympathy. But this time, the audience wasn't buying it. "You don't get to cry yet." Annalise's voice cut through the silence, sharp and clear. She wasn't whispering anymore. "Not when you've been doing this for years." Philip, who had finally opened his folder, looked up, his face pale, eyes wide with dawning horror. He looked from the documents to Julia, then to me, a silent plea for explanation. Julia lifted her head, her eyes red-rimmed, but a flicker of her usual manipulative fire still burned within them. "This is a lie," she wailed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Mackenzie, what is this? Why are you doing this to your own mother?" She turned to Philip, her voice shifting to a wounded maternal tone. "Philip, darling, don't believe her. She's unstable. I was just trying to protect you from Mackenzie's depression and laziness. She never puts effort in, you know. I was worried about you, about your finances, about her emotional withdrawal." Well, the words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd anticipated them. The familiar sting of her belittlement, the gaslighting, the twisting of reality. My emotional withdrawal, my laziness. Before I could even formulate a response, Mara, who had been silently flipping through her folder, gasped. Her eyes, usually full of mischievous gossip, were now wide with genuine shock and fury. "Protect him," she screeched, pointing a trembling finger at Julia. "You told me she stole from you. You said Mackenzie was stealing your pension, that she was irresponsible with money, that she was making you destitute. You said she was trying to get you committed." The room fell silent again, save for Julia's ragged breathing. Her eyes darted from Mara to me, then to Annalise. Trapped. Mara's revelation was the bombshell I hadn't even fully anticipated. Julia hadn't just been manipulating Philip and Annalise. She'd been poisoning the well against me with other family members, creating a false narrative of my supposed villainy. It was a calculated, insidious campaign of character assassination. "You told the same lies to multiple people," Mara continued, her voice rising in disbelief. "You pitted us against each other. You said Annalise was a drug addict who needed money for rehab. You said Mackenzie was trying to ruin your life." Julia tried to speak, but no words came out. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling, piece by piece, under the weight of her own lies. Philip finally found his voice, a strained whisper. "Mom, what is this? Why did you tell me Mackenzie was... I was scared. You said you'd tell Mackenzie everything. You made it sound like I was hiding something terrible. You said she'd leave me if she knew." His voice cracked with a mixture of confusion, shame, and betrayal. My anger, which had been simmering, erupted, not just at Julia, but at Philip too. "You were scared?" I spat, turning to him. "You were scared? So you just kept giving her money? For a year? While she told you I was lazy and depressed and emotionally withdrawn? You believed her over me? Your wife?" The hurt was raw, searing. He was a victim, yes, but he was also an enabler. He had chosen to believe her lies, to keep her secret, to betray my trust, all to avoid conflict. Julia, seeing her last line of defense crumble, suddenly pushed back her chair with a screech. "I can't believe this. This is an ambush. You're all against me." She scrambled to her feet, clutching the folder, her eyes wild. "I'm leaving. I don't need this." She made a move for the door, expecting, I suppose, for someone to follow, to beg her to stay, to apologize. But no one moved. Philip sat frozen, staring at the table. Mara was still reeling, her face a mask of disgust. Annalise and Greg watched her with cold, unwavering gazes. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by Julia's frantic footsteps. She reached the door, fumbled with the handle, and then she was gone. The door swung shut behind her with a soft click. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with unspoken truths. Philip finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a desperate apology. I just shook my head, my heart aching. Then Greg, Annalise's husband, who had been quiet until now, stood up slowly. His presence filled the room. His voice was calm, deliberate, but it carried an undeniable weight. "We weren't the only ones," he said, looking around the table, his gaze settling on me. "Renee left your mom because of this. We weren't the only ones. Renee left your mom because of this." Greg's words hung in the air, a final, devastating blow. Renee, my father. He had died when I was in my early 20s, a quiet, withdrawn man in his last years. I'd always attributed his distance to his illness, to his general weariness. But now, a new, chilling possibility opened up. After Julia's dramatic exit, the remaining four of us sat in stunned silence for a moment. Philip looked utterly shattered, his face pale and drawn. Mara was still processing, her usual vivacity replaced by a quiet, horrified reflection. Annalise and Greg exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. "Dad," I finally managed, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean, Greg?" Greg sat back down, his gaze steady. "Annalise told me. Your dad, he found out about her taking money from his brother, your Uncle David. Julia had convinced David she needed money for your college tuition, even though your dad was paying for it. When Renee found out, he confronted her. It was a huge fight. He threatened to leave then and there. He said he couldn't live with her lies anymore." Annalise nodded, her eyes distant. "I remember bits of it. Screaming. Dad packing a bag. He didn't actually leave, not then. But he changed after that. He just retreated. He stopped fighting. He looked terrified of her." A memory surfaced, sharp and clear. My last birthday with my father. I was 16. He'd given me a small wrapped gift, a book I'd wanted. Julia had been there, hovering, her smile too wide. I remember Dad looking at her, a flicker of something in his eyes I couldn't name then. Fear. It was fear. He wasn't just withdrawn. He was walking on eggshells, just like Mara had described her own childhood. He hadn't left because he was sick, or because he was tired. He had been trapped. The lunch ended quietly. Philip tried to apologize, stammering out explanations about how he just wanted to keep the peace, how he truly believed Julia was in distress. I listened, but the anger was still too fresh, too raw. "We'll talk later," I said, my voice flat. "A lot later." Over the next few weeks, the full weight of Julia's manipulation settled over me. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the decades of gaslighting, the subtle erosion of my self-worth, the constant competition she'd fostered between Annalise and me. It was a generational trauma, a cycle of silence and shame that had permeated our family for far too long. I started therapy. I found Sophie Dunn, a family friend in her late 40s who was also a licensed therapist. She listened patiently as I unspooled 20 years of Julia's insidious influence. Sophie didn't offer quick fixes or platitudes. She helped me see the patterns, to understand how Julia operated, and more importantly, how I had internalized her narrative. She helped me realize that my goal wasn't just revenge, it was liberation. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, my own life. My relationship with Philip was strained. We talked, or rather, I talked, and he listened, his face etched with remorse. He confessed how Julia had always made him feel inadequate, how she'd hinted that I was too much for him, how he'd felt pressured to fix her problems to prove himself worthy. It was a pathetic excuse, but I could see the genuine fear in his eyes. He was a people pleaser, and Julia had expertly exploited that. I told him he was on probation, emotionally and financially. He needed to earn back my trust, and that meant setting firm boundaries, starting with Julia. Meanwhile, Julia wasn't quiet. My phone began to buzz with her calls, then voicemails. At first, they were tearful, pleading. "Mackenzie, how could you do this? I'm your mother. We're family." Then they turned angry, accusatory. "You'll regret turning on your own mother. You always come back. You need me. You'll see." One voicemail left late one night contained a chilling mix of both. Her voice, raw with fury, then suddenly dissolving into theatrical sobs. "You think you're so strong, but you're nothing without me. You'll be alone. You'll regret this, Mackenzie. You always come back." I listened to it, my finger hovering over the delete button. The old Mackenzie, the one riddled with self-doubt, would have crumbled. But the new Mackenzie, the one who had finally seen the truth, felt a cold resolve harden in her gut. I wasn't coming back. I was done playing nice. The voicemail, Julia's voice oscillating between furious threats and theatrical sobs, was the last straw. Sophie, my therapist, had helped me see that engaging with Julia, even to tell her off, was still giving her power. The only way to truly break free was to cut the cord. A few days later, a certified letter arrived at Julia's address. It was a cease and desist letter, drafted with the help of a lawyer Freya recommended. It was short, formal, and to the point. Any further contact with me or Philip, any attempts at financial solicitation, would result in legal action. It was a radical step, one I never thought I'd take against my own mother, but it felt like a necessary act of self-preservation. Julia, predictably, did not take it well. She tried to rally her usual flying monkeys, cousins, church friends, distant relatives she'd cultivated over the years with her tales of woe. She called them, crying about my cruelty, my ingratitude, my abandonment. She painted herself as the victim, as always, but this time it didn't work. Mara, still simmering with indignation from the lunch, had been busy. She hadn't just been a witness, she'd been a catalyst. She'd quietly, meticulously posted all the receipts online, the screenshots of the texts, the Excel entries, the detailed accounts of Julia's financial manipulations of Annalise, and even the story of my father's quiet suffering. She didn't name names, but the context was clear enough for anyone in our extended family to understand. Mara, the family gossip, had turned her powers against the source of her own childhood pain. The effect was immediate and devastating. The family grapevine, usually Julia's most potent weapon, turned against her. Cousins who had always believed her story started asking questions. Church friends who had seen her as a pillar of the community began to distance themselves. The money, her primary currency of control, started to dry up. No more urgent medical bills from unsuspecting relatives. No more donations from sympathetic friends. Julia, who had always relied on others to fund her lifestyle and her emotional demands, was suddenly cut off. Socially ostracized, financially isolated, karma, indeed, had arrived, wearing a string of pearls. Philip, for his part, was trying. He'd blocked Julia's number, changed his bank account details, and started attending therapy sessions with Sophie, separately from me, to address his own people-pleasing tendencies and his fear of conflict. It was a long road, but he was walking it. With the $2,200 a month that Julia had been siphoning off, a new purpose emerged. It wasn't about revenge anymore, not in the petty sense. It was about redirecting that misused energy, that stolen potential, into something positive. I researched local nonprofits, eventually settling on one that provided legal aid and safe housing for women escaping toxic family situations, particularly those involving financial abuse. Every month, on the day the money would have gone to Julia, I made a direct deposit to the nonprofit. It felt like a cleansing, a reclamation. A few weeks after the dust settled, Annalise and I hosted a reunion dinner. Just us, Freya, Greg, and Philip. No Julia. It was quiet, almost peaceful. We talked, we laughed, we acknowledged the trauma, but we also celebrated the newfound freedom. The sister I had lost, I had found again. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat alone, a sense of quiet triumph settling over me. I pulled out my phone. I had one last message to send, not to Philip, not to Annalise, but to the number I had blocked, the number I would never answer again. "You told me I was never good enough," I typed, the words flowing easily without a trace of the old fear or self-doubt. "Yet you needed me. I don't anymore." I pressed send. It was a message into the void, a final declaration of independence. The latest voicemail from Julia was a familiar symphony of chaos. One moment her voice was a high-pitched shriek, accusing me of being a heartless monster, destroying her life, ruining the family. The next, it dissolved into ragged sobs, pleading for forgiveness, for understanding, for me to just call your poor mother. It was the same script, just a different day. I listened, not with the old knot of dread, but with a detached curiosity, like observing a specimen under a microscope. This was her, stripped bare, her usual charm and cunning replaced by raw, desperate manipulation. When it ended, I didn't save it. I didn't even hesitate. I pressed delete. It was a goodbye ritual. The digital evidence was gone, but the lessons were etched deep. I walked over to my desk, where the printed transcripts of Julia's texts and the Excel spreadsheet still sat, a physical manifestation of the betrayal. I picked them up, ran my fingers over the stark black and white. These had been my proof, my weapon. Now they were just paper. I held them over the small ceramic bowl I used for burning sage, lit a corner, and watched the flames curl, devouring the words, turning them to ash. The smoke carried away the last vestiges of the secret, the shame, the fear. The peace that settled over me wasn't a sudden, blinding light. It was a quiet, steady hum. It had come at a cost, of course. The illusion of a loving, functional family was shattered. The mother I thought I had, even with all her flaws, was gone, replaced by the stark reality of a manipulator. There was a loneliness in that, a profound grief for what could have been. But with it came clarity, independence, and a power I hadn't known I possessed. My sister, Annalise, was back in my life, a fierce, loyal ally. We talked almost every day, sharing stories, laughing at old memories, building a new foundation on honesty and shared understanding. It was a bond forged in fire, stronger than anything Julia could ever break. Philip was still trying. He was still in therapy, still learning to untangle decades of people-pleasing and conflict avoidance. He'd stopped flinching when my phone buzzed, and he'd started speaking up even to his own parents when they made passive-aggressive comments about family matters. He was rebuilding trust, brick by painstaking brick. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. My freelance food writing had taken on a new depth. I was working on an article, something broader than just recipes. I finished it that afternoon, the words flowing easily, fueled by my own journey. I proofread it one last time, then pressed send to my editor. The title, Your Mother Isn't Always Your Friend. A few weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. A physical letter, a rarity these days. It was from a reader, someone who had stumbled upon my article. Your story, it read in shaky, handwritten script. It helped me leave my mom. I didn't know it was possible. Thank you. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about something bigger. It was about breaking cycles, about finding your voice, about helping others find theirs. I had won, not by tearing someone down, but by building myself up. My mom still calls every Friday. I don't answer, but I do donate $2,200 a month, just not to her.
You'd embarrass us. My mother, Audrey, whispered the words like a secret, a delicate poison meant only for my ears. I was 28 and she was 54, still convinced that my life choices were a personal affront to her carefully curated image. We were in her sunroom, the air thick with the scent of lilies and her disapproval. I just casually asked about Reagan's wedding, about my cousin's big day, and that's when the whisper came. Not a shout, never a shout, just a quiet, surgical cut. Before we proceed, share your location below. I'm fascinated by my international reach. It wasn't just about Reagan's wedding, of course. It was about everything. My name is Alice, and I'm the black sheep of the Carter family, or at least that's the role they assigned me. My cousin Reagan, 27, was the golden child, the one who graduated from Princeton with honors, whose Instagram feed was a perfect tableau of curated perfection. Her fiancé, Kyle, 29, came from old money, the kind that smelled of mahogany and inherited privilege. Their wedding wasn't just a union, it was a merger, a public declaration of the family's elite status. And I, Alice, was the inconvenient truth they wanted to sweep under the rug. For years it had been like this, subtle exclusions, the gift limit emails that somehow always bypassed my inbox, only to be forwarded by a well-meaning aunt who'd then call to apologize for the oversight. The forgotten invitations to family dinners, always followed by a breezy, "Oh, we just assumed you were busy with your little things, Alice." My mother, Audrey, would always be the first to ask, with a saccharine smile, how I was doing with my little things. My art, my freelance design work, anything that wasn't a corporate ladder or a prestigious degree. My older cousin, Delilah, 30, would chime in, her voice sharp as a razor, about my wasted potential. Even Tessa, 26, my younger cousin, who was usually a bit kinder, would just look away. My father, Roland, 60, would just clear his throat and retreat behind his newspaper, a silent, passive observer to the slow-motion car crash of my family dynamics. I remember the dress fitting. It was for Audrey's gown for Reagan's wedding, a custom-made silk number that probably cost more than my first car. I'd gone with her, mostly out of habit, and partly because I still held on to some naive hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The boutique was all hushed tones and expensive fabrics. Audrey was in the fitting room, and I was flipping through a magazine when Reagan walked in, a flurry of excitement and bridal glow. She saw me, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then snapped back into place. "Alice," she said, her voice a little too bright. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Audrey emerged from the fitting room, a vision in shimmering silk. Her eyes landed on me, then flicked to Reagan. A silent conversation passed between them, one I knew well. It was the look that said, "Problem." Audrey smoothed down her dress. "Alice, darling," she began, her voice dripping with false concern. "I completely forgot. You have that appointment, don't you? The one you mentioned? You really should go. You don't want to be late. I didn't have an appointment. I never had an appointment on a Tuesday afternoon. But I knew the drill. It was the polite, public way of telling me to leave. Reagan watched, a tiny smirk playing on her lips. The sales associate, sensing the shift in atmosphere, suddenly found something fascinating on a distant rack. No one said a word. No one stopped it. I just nodded, a familiar dull ache settling in my chest. Right, I said, my voice flat. My appointment. I walked out of that boutique, the heavy glass door swinging shut behind me, the sound echoing the finality of my exclusion. I got into my beat-up sedan, the one my mother always subtly hinted I should replace, and just sat there for a moment. The sun was hot on the windshield. I pulled my phone from my bag, the familiar weight of it a small comfort. I opened an app, one that looked innocuous to anyone else, just a simple financial dashboard. But this wasn't just any dashboard. This was my private world, the one I'd built in secret, brick by digital brick, while they were busy judging my little things. The numbers glowed, stark white against the dark screen. 8,512, 345.17. $8.4 million. From early crypto investments, from years of living frugally, quietly, while they flaunted their inherited wealth and Ivy League degrees. I looked at the boutique, at the expensive cars parked outside, at the world that had just dismissed me. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. I leaned back against the headrest, the leather warm against my scalp. Okay, I whispered to the empty car, the words tasting like metal and promise. They want royalty? Let's make them beg at the gates. The hum of my car's engine was the only sound as I stared at that $8.4 million on my screen. It wasn't a number I'd ever expected to see next to my name. Not mine, anyway. Alice Carter, the one who couldn't even get a proper invite to a family wedding. Funny how life works. When I was 20, fresh out of a state university they barely acknowledged, I was just trying to make ends meet. My parents, Audrey and Roland, had given me the standard "you're on your own now" speech, which basically meant, we've paid for your cousin's Ivy League tuition, but you're getting the budget plan. I'd landed a few freelance design gigs, enough to cover rent and ramen. That's when I stumbled into the early crypto forums. It was all so new, so wild, so completely outside the traditional investment world my family worshipped. They were busy chasing blue-chip stocks and real estate, things you could see and touch and brag about at country club luncheons. Me? I was fascinated by the anonymity, the decentralization, the idea that value could exist outside their gate-kept systems. I started small, investing what little I could spare, often foregoing new clothes or nights out. I lived modestly, almost invisibly, for years. While Reagan was jet-setting to Europe on her parents' dime and Delilah was climbing the corporate ladder, I was hunched over my laptop, learning, analyzing, and quietly accumulating. They saw my quiet life as proof of my lack of ambition, my wasted potential. I saw it as a shield. Being underestimated was my superpower. It meant no one paid attention, no one asked questions, no one saw the quiet fortune I was building. They just saw Alice, the one doing her little things. After the dress-fitting incident, the humiliation simmered, but it also sharpened something inside me. I wasn't just sad anymore, I was cold. I started hearing more about Reagan's wedding through the family grapevine, mostly from Tessa, who'd occasionally text me snippets, probably feeling a little guilty. The venue, everyone whispered, was going to be stunning. Villa Lucrezia. The name hit me like a jolt. Villa Lucrezia. I'd seen it listed just a few weeks prior, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, complete with manicured gardens and a grand ballroom. It had been on the market for ages, a relic of old money that no one seemed to want to maintain anymore. I'd even clicked through the listing photos, admiring the architecture, never imagining it would become the backdrop for Reagan's corporate merger wedding. My fingers flew across my keyboard. A quick search confirmed it. Villa Lucrezia was still for sale. The price tag was hefty, but a mere fraction of my current net worth. A thought, cold and clear as ice water, formed in my mind. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. It was about taking back the narrative. I didn't hesitate, not for a second. The next day, I contacted my lawyer, Douglas Brewer. He was a no-nonsense type, sharp and discreet, exactly what I needed. I explained what I wanted: to purchase Villa Lucrezia immediately through a shell company under a pseudonym. I chose Avery Blackwell. It sounded suitably bland and forgettable, just like they thought I was. The entire payment would be wired in crypto, converted to fiat at the last possible moment to minimize any traceable links. Douglas didn't bat an eye. He just nodded, his expression unreadable. He was used to my unconventional requests. The process moved surprisingly fast. When you're paying cash or the equivalent, things tend to accelerate. The days blurred into a flurry of legal documents, secure transfers, and encrypted communications. Each step felt like a small victory, a quiet rebellion. There was a strange, exhilarating rush to it. This wasn't just about getting even. It was about asserting a power I'd always had, but never wielded. It felt empowering even before the final act. It was the feeling of taking back agency, of turning their weaponized snobbery into my own strategic advantage. A week later, I sat across from the venue manager in a small, sterile office. She was a pleasant woman, oblivious to the true nature of the transaction. The papers were spread out on the table: the deed, the sales agreement, and a stack of existing vendor contracts for upcoming events, including a very detailed one for the Carter Gross wedding. My wedding. Well, Reagan's. Soon to be mine, in a different way. I signed the ownership documents as Avery Blackwell, my hand steady. Then, as we reviewed the existing contracts, I paused. Just a few minor adjustments, I said, my voice calm, almost bored. Standard clauses, really. I'd like to add a provision for immediate electrical override in case of unforeseen circumstances, and a clause allowing for the termination of vendor services with cause, effective immediately upon owner's discretion. The manager blinked. Those are unusual, Ms. Blackwell. Most owners prefer to maintain continuity for events. I smiled, a small, tight curve of my lips. I'm a stickler for control, I said, leaning forward slightly. And I like to be prepared for any unforeseen circumstances. Just a formality, I assure you. She shrugged, a little uncomfortable but eager to close the deal. If you insist. She highlighted the sections, and I initialed them, the ink a dark promise on the crisp paper, the electrical override, the vendor termination, small, innocuous changes to anyone else. But to me, they were the keys to the kingdom. Or rather, the keys to shutting it down. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt like a slow-motion countdown. I was still Alice, the quiet one, the one politely excluded. My phone buzzed with family group chats, full of excited chatter about Reagan's upcoming nuptials. Can't believe it's almost here, Tessa, 26, would text. So excited for the rehearsal dinner. Delilah, 30, would chime in. Audrey, 54, my mother, would post endless heart emojis and gushing sentiments about her beautiful Reagan and Kyle. I'd respond with a generic thumbs-up emoji or a simple looks fun, pretending not to care, pretending I wasn't meticulously tracking every detail. In reality, I was coordinating with Douglas Brewer, my lawyer. He'd set up the shell company, Avery Blackwell LLC, and handled the Villa Lucrezia purchase. Now our conversations were about the cascade fail of services. We'd discussed the legalities endlessly. As the new owner, I had the right to enforce the clauses I'd added to the vendor contracts. It wasn't about destroying property or breaking laws. It was about leveraging perfectly legal, albeit unusual, contractual terms. Douglas, 40s, was a master of legal loopholes, and he found the perfect angles. He'd even found a way to ensure the generator, a crucial backup for such a large event, would be legally inaccessible. It was all so clean, so clinical, so utterly devastating. I didn't need an invitation to know what was happening. Instagram was my window into their perfect world. Reagan, 27, was practically living on the platform, posting every detail. The catered sushi bar at the welcome reception, a lavish affair I'd only seen glimpses of through Tessa's stories. The rehearsal dinner videos, Reagan in a white lace dress, Kyle, 29, stiffly smiling beside her, looking more like a business partner than a groom. Their smug anticipation was palpable, radiating from every filtered photo. My family, the Carters, were all there, basking in the reflected glory of Reagan's perfect life. Audrey, my mother, looked radiant, probably already mentally composing the thank you notes for the prestige this union would bring. Delilah was probably networking, making sure everyone knew how successful she was. Even Roland, 60, my father, usually so detached, seemed to be enjoying the spectacle, momentarily forgetting his usual discomfort with Audrey's elitism. There were moments late at night when I'd stare at my ceiling, the plan replaying in my mind, and a knot of tension would form in my stomach. Did I really want to go through with this? I had the money, the power, the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd built something they couldn't even fathom. Was this necessary? What was the emotional cost? Would it truly make me feel better or just leave me emptier? Revenge, I knew, was a double-edged sword. It could cut deep, but it could also leave scars on the wielder. I'd spent years building my financial independence, creating a life where I didn't need their approval. Was tearing down their facade just another way of seeking their attention, even if it was negative? But then I'd remember the whispers. You'd embarrass us. The forgotten invitations, the patronizing questions about my little things, the dress fitting, the way Audrey and Reagan had dismissed me without a second thought, the years of being underestimated, sidelined, treated like a charity case, the anger, cold and steady, would return, overriding the doubt. This wasn't about attention. This was about a reckoning. It was about showing them the true cost of their snobbery. The final confirmation came, ironically, from the wedding planner herself. Carmen Hernandez, 40s, a ruthless professional known for her meticulous attention to detail, was managing Reagan's wedding. She was probably overwhelmed, juggling a dozen high-profile events. In a moment of what I could only describe as divine intervention, or perhaps just a very tired assistant, Carmen accidentally emailed the final invoices for the Villa Lucrezia event to Avery Blackwell, LLC. My private email pinged. I opened it. A detailed breakdown of every single expense, the catering, the floral arrangements, the string quartet, the bespoke linens, the custom lighting. The total was staggering, $680,000. It was all there, laid bare. I stared at the screen, a slow smile spreading across my face. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle. I typed out a reply, my fingers steady on the keyboard. Authorization revoked. I hit send. The email vanished into the digital ether, a silent, invisible bomb. The countdown had begun. The morning of Reagan's wedding dawned oppressively bright. I woke early, not to the usual Sunday quiet, but to a strange, humming energy in the air. Today was the day. The culmination of years of quiet resentment, months of meticulous planning. I moved through my apartment methodically, No frantic rushing, no last-minute jitters, just a calm, almost detached focus. I showered, letting the hot water run over my skin, washing away any lingering doubt. Then I pulled out the dress. It was blood red, a vibrant, unapologetic crimson, long, sleek, and form-fitting, with a modest neckline that still managed to hint at confidence. My mother, Audrey, 54, had seen it once months ago when I'd impulsively bought it. She'd wrinkled her nose, her lips pursed. "Too much, Alice," she'd said. "It screams for attention. Not very tasteful." I smiled as I slipped it on. It fit perfectly. It didn't scream for attention. It commanded it. And today, attention was precisely what I intended to get. I applied minimal makeup, just enough to sharpen my features, and left my hair down, a dark cascade against the red fabric. I looked in the mirror, not the Alice they knew. This was Avery Blackwell, the owner. My car, the same beat-up sedan they so subtly disparaged, felt like a chariot as I drove towards Villa Lucrezia. The directions were ingrained in my mind, not from an invitation, but from property deeds and detailed site plans. The drive was serene, the roads quiet on a Sunday morning. I passed familiar landmarks, the upscale boutiques, the manicured lawns of the wealthy suburbs. Their world, my world now. I pulled off the main road and onto the long, winding driveway that led up to the villa. It was exactly as I remembered from the photos. Grand, imposing, surrounded by lush gardens. Cars were already lining the drive, luxury vehicles glinting in the sun. Guests, dressed in their finest, were beginning to mill about, chatting, laughing, posing for photos. The air buzzed with anticipation. I didn't drive all the way up. I stopped at the very edge of the property, just where the paved driveway met the public road, partially obscured by a thick line of ancient oak trees. From here, I had a clear view of the villa's entrance, the grand archway adorned with white flowers. I could see the guests taking their seats, the string quartet playing softly, the photographer already snapping away. Reagan, 27, would be inside, preparing for her grand entrance, probably preening in front of a mirror, her face a mask of smug perfection. My phone vibrated. It was Douglas Brewer, my lawyer. His call was precisely timed. The ceremony was about to begin. I could see the last few stragglers hurrying inside. Soon, the music would swell. Reagan would walk down the aisle, and Kyle, 29, would be waiting, probably looking bored but dutiful. Instagram Lives would be rolling, capturing every moment for the world to see. I answered the call. "Douglas," I said, my voice steady. "Alice," he replied, his tone all business. "The moment of truth, are you ready?" "Ready," I confirmed. "Excellent. I'm making the call now to Carmen Hernandez, the wedding planner. She'll be receiving terse instructions. Shut down power, pull vendor contracts, decline generator use. It's all legally sound, Alice. Just remember, you're the owner enforcing contractual terms. No one can touch you." I watched as the last guest disappeared inside the villa. The string quartet's music swelled, signaling the start of the processional. Any second now, Reagan would appear. "Do it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I hung up the phone. From the shadow of the front gate, I watched. The grand doors of Villa Lucrezia opened, and a hush fell over the assembled guests. The music swelled to a crescendo. Then it happened. A sudden, jarring silence. The music cut out mid-note. The soft hum of air conditioning died. The light fixtures, moments ago casting a warm glow, flickered once, then plunged the grand entrance into a sudden, deep gloom. A collective gasp rose from the assembled guests. Mics, just moments ago ready to amplify Reagan's vows, screeched once, a dying, tortured sound, then went silent. From my vantage point, I saw the ripple of confusion, then horror, spread through the crowd. The carefully orchestrated perfection of a $680,000 wedding, meticulously planned for months, had just ground to a halt. In the sudden, oppressive quiet, all I could hear was the distant murmur of confused voices and the frantic rising tide of panic. The silence was deafening, broken only by the confused murmurs of the guests. Then a collective groan as the air conditioning, which had been humming steadily moments before, sputtered and died completely. The temperature in the grand ballroom, already warm from the crowd, began to climb. Panic rippled through the elegant gathering. I watched from my vantage point, a detached observer at the edge of the chaos. The string quartet, their instruments suddenly useless, looked bewildered. The caterers, who had been preparing to serve the first course of a meticulously planned menu, froze. Servers stood mid-aisle, trays of delicate appetizers suspended in midair, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. Inside, I could imagine the scene. Reagan, 27, probably standing at the altar, her perfect white dress suddenly looking less pristine in the dim light. Kyle, 29, his usual stiff composure likely cracking under the unexpected pressure. A woman's voice, sharp and high-pitched, cut through the murmuring. "What is happening? Carmen?" "Where is Carmen?" It was Audrey, 54, my mother, her voice laced with disbelief and rising hysteria. She was probably looking for Carmen Hernandez, 40s, the wedding planner, who was, at that very moment, likely fielding a very unpleasant call from Douglas Brewer. Carmen, I knew, would be unreachable to them. She was bound by the new contract terms. "The generator! Where's the generator?" Audrey shrieked, her voice echoing slightly in the sudden quiet of the vast space. "We paid for a generator. This is unacceptable." She was probably thinking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in this day, the perfect image crumbling before her eyes. I stepped slightly closer, moving from the deeper shadows of the trees to the edge of the long driveway, still partially obscured but now visible to anyone looking closely. The red dress was a beacon against the green foliage. Through the wrought iron gates, I saw her. Tessa, 26, my younger cousin. She was standing near the entrance, her phone half raised, probably trying to get a signal, her face pale with shock. Her eyes, wide and disbelieving, swept across the driveway, then landed on me. Her mouth dropped open slightly. She blinked, then looked again, as if to confirm what she was seeing. She took a hesitant step forward, her gaze fixed on me. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but I knew what she was asking. "Did you—" I met her gaze, held it, and gave her the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. Just enough for her to know, just enough for her to understand. Suddenly, the wail of sirens pierced the air. Blue and red lights flashed in the distance, growing rapidly closer. Someone had called the police. Security breach, probably. An intruder. My heart rate remained steady. This was part of the plan. Douglas had already briefed me. When the police cars pulled up, 2 patrol vehicles, their lights painting the grand facade of Villa Lucretia with an eerie glow, I stepped fully out of the shadows. 2 officers emerged from their cars, their expressions grim. They scanned the property, their eyes searching for a culprit, an explanation for the sudden chaos. They looked towards the villa, then back towards the gate, their gaze sweeping over the parked cars and the bewildered guests. One of them, a burly officer with a stern face, spotted me. He started walking towards me, his hand resting on his belt. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice firm, "are you all right? We received a report of a disturbance, a security breach. Did you see anyone?" I stood calmly, my hands clasped in front of me. The red dress seemed to glow in the fading light. "No, officer," I said, my voice clear and steady. "No intruder." He narrowed his eyes, clearly confused. "Then what's going on here?" The power's out, the event's in chaos. I reached into my small clutch bag and pulled out a neatly folded stack of documents. The deed to Villa Lucrezia, the sales agreement, the legal papers confirming my ownership through Avery Blackwell LLC. I handed them to him. "I own this villa," I said, my voice quiet but firm enough to carry in the sudden stillness. "Alice Carter, and these are my guests." The officer took the documents, his brow furrowed in confusion, then surprise. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the official seals and signatures. His partner joined him, equally bewildered. The guests, who had been murmuring and pointing, fell silent, watching the interaction with bated breath. "Alice Carter?" the officer finally said, looking up from the papers, his gaze now fixed on me with a new kind of scrutiny. "You own Villa Lucrezia?" "That's right," I confirmed, my voice calm, unwavering. "Through Avery Blackwell LLC. I purchased the property a few weeks ago." The news spread like wildfire. Whispers turned into shocked gasps, then outright exclamations. I saw Audrey, 54, my mother, pushing through the crowd, her face a mask of disbelief. Reagan, 27, her bridal gown now looking less like a dream and more like a costume in a bad play, stood beside her fiancé, Kyle, 29, her face a thundercloud. Delilah, 30, my older cousin, looked absolutely apoplectic. Carmen Hernandez, 40s, the wedding planner, finally appeared, her face pale and drawn. She'd clearly just gotten off the phone with Douglas Brewer, or perhaps had tried to contact the shell company herself. She approached Audrey, her voice low and frantic, but loud enough for me to catch snippets. "Mrs. Smith Carter, I just received confirmation. The villa was sold to a shell company, Avery Blackwell LLC. They revoked all vendor contracts. The electrical override was a new clause." "It's all legal, Mrs. Smith Carter. I'm so sorry." Audrey's head snapped up, her eyes wide with horror, darting from Carmen to me. "Alice, you own this place? This is your doing?" Her voice was a strangled whisper, laced with a mix of fury and dawning comprehension. Reagan stormed forward, her perfectly coiffed hair slightly askew. "What is this, Alice? Are you insane? You ruined my wedding. My wedding." Her voice rose to a shriek. Kyle, usually so composed, just stood there looking utterly mortified. Delilah stepped up, her eyes blazing. "This is beyond the pale, Alice. Humiliating us in front of Kyle's family. Do you have any idea what this looks like? This is disgusting." My mother, Audrey, finally found her voice, a strained, desperate plea. "Alice, darling, this is a terrible misunderstanding. You have to apologize. Immediately, we can fix this. Just tell them it was a mistake." She tried to reach for my arm, but I subtly stepped back. I looked at them, one by one. Audrey, still clinging to the illusion of control. Reagan, consumed by her own shattered perfection. Delilah, obsessed with appearances. Kyle, a silent, uncomfortable witness. "I don't speak to strangers," I said, my voice clear and calm, cutting through the rising tide of their accusations. The words hung in the air, cold and precise. It was the same line they'd used on me, in 100 different ways, for years. The subtle exclusions, the forgotten invitations, the dismissive whispers. They had made me a stranger in my own family. Now I was returning the favor. A hush fell. Their faces, already contorted with anger and confusion, twisted further into shock. They stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. The quiet, underestimated Alice, suddenly standing tall in a blood-red dress, holding the deed to their ruined perfect day. I saw a flicker of something in Tessa's eyes. She was still standing near the gate, watching, her phone forgotten in her hand. There was no anger there, no judgment. Only a strange mix of understanding and awe. She was beginning to see. Maybe some of the other cousins too, who had always just followed the family line, were starting to question the narrative. The black sheep wasn't so black anymore. She was just different and powerful. The officers, having confirmed the legalities of my ownership, were now trying to disperse the bewildered guests. The wedding was clearly over. The dream had evaporated into the humid air of the unair-conditioned ballroom. I turned, ready to walk away, to leave them to their shattered illusions. As I took my first step, a guest, a woman I vaguely recognized as one of Kyle's distant relatives, gasped, her voice loud enough to carry across the stunned silence. Did she really ruin a 6-figure wedding just to prove a point? The question hung in the air, a final damning indictment. Did she really ruin a 6-figure wedding just to prove a point? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just kept walking, leaving the stunned, angry, and utterly humiliated faces of my family behind. The red dress swished around my legs, a silent, defiant statement. I got back into my car, started the engine, and drove away, leaving Villa Lucrezia and the shattered remnants of Reagan's perfect day in my rearview mirror. The next few days were a blur of digital noise. The wedding disaster went viral almost immediately. Someone, probably a guest who'd managed to get a signal, had uploaded a shaky video of the power cutting out, Reagan's horrified face, Audrey's shrieks about the generator. Then came the photos of the police, of me standing calmly, holding documents. The internet, in its infinite wisdom, had dubbed it in a villa vengeance. My phone, usually quiet, buzzed constantly with notifications. News articles, Reddit threads, TikToks dissecting every angle. My name, Alice Carter, was suddenly everywhere, linked to the eccentric millionaire who bought a venue just to shut down her cousin's wedding. Douglas Brewer, my lawyer, called me the next morning. "Alice," he said, his voice a mix of professional calm and thinly veiled amusement. "The internet is having a field day. Just a heads up, some guests are threatening civil suits for emotional distress, lost deposits, etc. But as we discussed, you never hosted the event. You simply exercised your rights as the property owner to enforce contractual terms. They had contracts with the vendors, not with you. They paid the venue, which you now own. There's little to no claim against you personally, or against Avery Blackwell LLC. It's a messy situation for them, but legally, you're in the clear." It felt good, better than I'd expected. The quiet satisfaction of seeing their carefully constructed facade crumble was immense. It wasn't just the money, it was the public humiliation, the exposure of their snobbery for all to see. They had built their entire identity on being perfect, elite, untouchable. And I, the black sheep, had pulled the rug out from under them. Then my father, Roland, 60, sent me a text. It was short, uncharacteristic for him to initiate contact about family drama. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying." I stared at the message. Audrey, 54, crying. Not because she was hurt, but because her image was shattered, because her perfect daughter's perfect wedding was a public disaster. It didn't make me feel guilty. It didn't heal the damage her constant comparisons, her subtle exclusions, her dismissive whispers had caused for years. The years of feeling like I was never enough, never smart enough, never prestigious enough. The emptiness of that wound remained. Revenge didn't fill it. It just made sure they felt a fraction of the pain they'd inflicted. 2 days later, another piece of news filtered through the family grapevine, this time from Tessa, 26, who sent me a discreet text. Kyle dumped Reagan, said her family was too unhinged for a future. Apparently, his parents were furious about the scandal. I read the message twice. Kyle, 29, the old money fiancé, gone. The corporate merger, dissolved. That was unexpected. A bonus, really. Reagan, 27, the golden child, now without her golden ticket. The irony was almost poetic. Her perfect life, built on appearances, had imploded. I was sitting on my couch later that evening, scrolling through the Churchville Vengeance feed, a strange mixture of triumph and weariness washing over me. The apartment felt quiet, almost too quiet. The phone buzzed again, not a text, a soft scrape against my front door. I got up, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. Nothing. I opened it slowly. A letter lay on the mat. Thick, cream-colored paper, sealed with a wax stamp. My name, Alice, handwritten in elegant, looping script. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from my mother. I picked up the letter. The wax seal, embossed with the Carter family crest, felt cold beneath my thumb. I carried it to my kitchen table, the one I'd bought second-hand years ago, a stark contrast to the polished mahogany my mother favored. I sat down, the letter heavy in my hand, and slowly broke the seal. The elegant script unfolded across the page. It was exactly what I expected. Audrey, 54, my mother, trying to rewrite history. My dearest Alice, it began. I know things have been difficult. Your father and I have been so worried about you. We never meant to hurt you, darling. You just got so distant. We always wanted what was best for you, to see you thrive, to be part of the family. It went on, a carefully crafted tapestry of gaslighting and feigned concern. She mentioned the wedding only in passing, as a regrettable incident, never once acknowledging her role in my exclusion. The letter ended with a plea for coffee, a casual catch-up, as if nothing had happened, as if years of subtle emotional abuse could be wiped away with a single cup of lukewarm apology. I read it twice, then a third time. There was no genuine remorse, no understanding of the depth of the hurt she'd inflicted. Just a desperate attempt to regain control, to smooth over the public embarrassment. A dry, humorless laugh escaped my lips. I didn't burn the bridge. They buried me under it, brick by brick, with their whispers and their dismissals. I folded the letter precisely, placed it back in its envelope, and dropped it into the recycling bin. There was no anger, no triumph, just a quiet sense of finality. The bridge was gone, and I wasn't interested in rebuilding it. A few days later, I found myself in a new cafe, one I'd never been to before, tucked away on a quiet side street. The air smelled of roasted coffee and fresh pastries. I was meeting with a builder, a no-nonsense woman named Maria, to discuss the renovations for Villa Lucrezia. Not for weddings, not for lavish parties, for something else entirely. So, the main ballroom, I said, spreading out blueprints on the small table. I want to convert it into a collaborative workspace. High-speed internet, modular furniture, soundproof pods for calls. The smaller rooms upstairs can be private offices, and the gardens. I want to create outdoor meeting spaces, maybe even a small amphitheater for presentations. Maria nodded, taking notes. And the purpose, Ms. Carter? A tech incubator, I explained, a genuine smile touching my lips. For women-led startups, affordable space, mentorship, access to capital, a place where talent is recognized, not dismissed, where little things can grow into something monumental. She looked at me, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. I like it, she said, her voice firm. A lot. As we talked, a young woman walked past our table, holding a shimmering white wedding dress draped over her arm. She was probably on her way to a bridal boutique nearby. She looked nervous, excited, a little overwhelmed. I watched her go, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. I leaned closer to Maria, my voice a low murmur. You know, I said, if I were getting married, I'd wear red. Scare them a little. Maria chuckled, a deep, knowing sound. I looked around the bustling cafe, at the strangers going about their lives, oblivious to the quiet revolution I'd just orchestrated. The revenge had been satisfying, a necessary act of defiance. It had exposed the cracks in their perfect facade, made them visible to everyone, including themselves. But it hadn't magically healed the years of neglect. That was my own work to do, on my own terms. Revenge doesn't fix the cracks, but it makes sure everyone sees them.
They toasted to Emily's future. I raised my phone instead of my glass. My name is Kiara, and I've spent 29 years being invisible in my own family. Tonight, on my birthday, I discovered just how invisible I really was. I deliberately stayed late at the coffee shop, grading freelance design projects until my laptop battery died. Call it self-preservation. Birthdays in the Allen household had become exercises in disappointment, so I figured I'd skip the awkwardness entirely, maybe grab takeout, watch Netflix, pretend I didn't care that my parents forgot again. The house was blazing with lights when I pulled into the driveway. Cars lined the street. My Aunt Robin's BMW, my dad's business partner's Tesla, even Mrs. Henderson from next door. My heart did this stupid little flutter. Maybe they hadn't forgotten. Maybe this was why Mum had been so evasive on the phone yesterday. I fumbled with my keys, already planning my surprised face, when the front door swung open. "Ciara, there you are!" Mum's voice carried that fake brightness she reserved for company. "We were wondering when you'd show up." The living room was packed. Balloons everywhere, a catered spread on the dining table, champagne glasses catching the light. Everyone turned to look at me, and for one perfect second I thought, "Happy birthday, Emily!" someone shouted from the kitchen. The words hit like ice water. Emily emerged from the crowd, radiant in a designer dress I'd never seen before. She threw her arms around me with theatrical enthusiasm. "Ciara, I'm so glad you made it to my party." "Your party." The words came out flat. "Well, it's your birthday too, technically," she laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But you know how it is. I actually do things with my life." The room erupted in polite laughter. My mother beamed at Emily like she'd just cured cancer. I stood there in my work clothes, jeans and a sweater that had seen better days, while Emily held court in my living room. My living room. The mortgage payments came out of my account every month, but somehow this felt like her space now. "Ciara, honey, grab a drink," Dad said, not looking at me. He was deep in conversation with his golf buddy about Emily's new marketing job. Emily was just telling us about her promotion. I walked to the kitchen in a daze. The cake sat on the counter, 3 layers, professional frosting, elegant script that read, "Happy birthday, Emily and Kiara." Except my name looked like an afterthought, squeezed in smaller letters at the end. "Isn't it funny?" Robin appeared beside me, wine glass in hand. "Same birthday, but Emily's always been the one who knows how to celebrate properly. You're so low-key." Low-key, that's what they called it when I didn't demand attention, when I paid for things quietly, when I cleaned up after their messes without complaint. "Where did you disappear to today, anyway?" Mum joined us cutting generous slices of cake. "Emily's been here since noon helping set up. She even brought the champagne." "I was working." "Oh, that little computer thing you do." She waved dismissively. "Well, you're here now. Try to mingle. Emily's friends are all so accomplished." Emily's friends. In my house. Eating cake with my name grudgingly included. I watched Emily pose for photos by the fireplace, the same spot where my college graduation pictures used to hang. They'd been replaced months ago with her headshots from some amateur modelling thing she'd tried. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out. Emily grabbed a champagne flute and tapped it with a fork. The room quieted. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, voice carrying perfectly. "This year has been incredible. The new job, the new apartment, well, let's just say new everything." She shot a meaningful look at someone in the crowd. And I couldn't have done any of it without family support. Family support. I thought about the bank transfers I'd been tracking, the ones that showed up as emergency loans but never got paid back, the ones that coincidentally matched Emily's shopping sprees. "To Emily," Dad raised his glass, "our shining star." Everyone drank, everyone except me. I pulled out my phone instead, opening the recording app I'd been using for months. Not for this, originally. I'd started documenting things after the third time Mum claimed I'd agreed to pay for something I'd never heard of. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like evidence. "And of course," Emily continued, "thanks to Ciara for letting us use her place. She wouldn't have done anything special anyway, right?" More laughter, more toasts, more of my life being rewritten in real time. I hit record and slipped the phone into my pocket. They had no idea I'd been keeping track of everything, every slight, every theft disguised as family obligation, every time they'd made me feel like a stranger in my own life. But tonight, my birthday, celebrated as someone else's triumph in my own home, tonight was the final piece I needed. The party continued around me, but I was already somewhere else, already planning. They thought I was too meek to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. The party finally ended at midnight. I helped clean up in silence while Emily held court on my couch, scrolling through photos on her phone with Mom and Robin. "This one's perfect for Instagram," Emily said, showing them a shot of her blowing out candles. "The lighting is so good in here, Ciara. You should really let me use this space more often." I stacked plates with mechanical precision. After they left, I sat in my kitchen with my laptop and a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Turned out my birthday was special, just not how I'd expected. The bank statements loaded slowly. 3 months of transactions I'd been too busy to scrutinise properly, too trusting to question. There it was. March 15th, $12,800 transfer to Family Emergency Fund. I remembered that call from Dad. Emily's car had broken down, needed immediate repairs. Could I help just this once? March 20th, Emily's Instagram story from a spa weekend in Napa. April 3rd, another $1,500 for medical expenses. April 5th, Emily's post about her new designer handbag collection. May 12th, $3,200 for home repairs. May 14th, Emily's housewarming party photos, new furniture, everything matching, everything expensive. Jesus Christ, the words slipped out as I scrolled deeper. My phone buzzed, text from Serena, my roommate who was visiting her parents this week. How was the birthday? Did they actually remember this year? I called her instead of texting back. "Hey, birthday girl, wait, you sound weird. What happened?" They threw Emily a party in my house on my birthday. Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, what now?" I told her everything. The cake, the toasts, the casual dismissal of my existence. Serena made increasingly outraged noises. "That's it," she said finally. "I'm driving back tonight." "Don't. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're using your scary, calm voice. What are you planning?" I looked at the bank statements spread across my kitchen table. "Remember how you said I should document everything, in case they tried to gaslight me again?" "Yeah." "I've been recording conversations for 3 months, and I just found something interesting in the family trust paperwork." "Oh, shit. What kind of interesting?" I pulled out the folder I'd been avoiding since Grandma Celeste died 2 years ago. Legal documents, investment statements, things that made my head hurt. But tonight, with wine and rage as motivation, the words came into focus. "Serena, listen to this. Upon the primary beneficiary reaching age 28, full executor privileges transfer from the appointed guardian to said beneficiary, including all decisions regarding fund distribution and account access." Okay, translate that into human. I turned 29 today. The trust fund my parents have been managing, the one they've been using to fund Emily's lifestyle, I can take control of it, all of it. Holy shit, how much are we talking about? I scrolled through the investment summary. The number made me dizzy. Enough to matter, a lot. "Ciara, this is huge. Your grandmother left you..." "She left me everything, and my parents have been treating it like their personal ATM for Emily's adventures." I clicked through more statements. Look at this. Last month they moved money into some investment account I've never seen before. Guess whose name is on the beneficiary list? Please tell me you're joking. Emily Ford, my cousin, is listed as the backup beneficiary on an account funded with my inheritance. Serena was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? I stared at Emily's Instagram, still open on my phone. Her latest story showed her at dinner with someone whose back looked familiar. The next slide showed their hands intertwined across the table. A men's watch I recognised. Is that Bradley's watch? I zoomed in on the photo. Who's Bradley? My ex, the one who said he needed space to figure things out. Apparently he figured it out with Emily. Oh, fuck no, absolutely not. We're burning this whole thing down. I screenshotted the image, added it to the folder on my desktop labelled evidence. 3 months of recordings, bank statements, social media posts, and now this. Serena, how hard would it be to make a video, something that tells the whole story? With your graphic design skills and my tech background, we could make something that goes viral. But Kiara, are you sure? Once you put this out there, there's no taking it back. I thought about Emily's speech tonight, about Mom dismissing my work as that little computer thing, about Dad toasting their shining star while I stood invisible in my own kitchen. They made their choice a long time ago. I'm just finally making mine. Okay, I'll be there by morning. We're going to need coffee, snacks, and a really good internet connection. And a lawyer. I'm calling the trust administrator first thing Monday. This is going to be epic. Your grandmother would be proud. I looked at the framed photo on my counter. Grandma Celeste and me at my college graduation. She'd been the only one who came, the only one who ever saw me. Yeah, I said softly. I think she would. After we hung up, I opened a new document on my laptop, started typing out a timeline, every slight, every theft, every moment they'd made me feel like I didn't belong in my own family. They'd spent years erasing me from the narrative. Time to write my own story. Serena arrived at 7 a.m. with 3 coffees and a bag of donuts. Okay, show me everything, she said, setting up her laptop next to mine on the dining table. I'd been awake all night organising files, audio recordings, bank statements, screenshots, even old family photos where I'd been cropped out or replaced. The evidence covered every surface. Jesus, Kiara, this is like a documentary waiting to happen. Start with this one. I played the recording from 2 months ago. Mum's voice came through clearly. Emily just has that spark, you know. She lights up a room. Ciara's always been more background. It's not her fault. She just doesn't have Emily's presence. And she said this knowing you were in the house? Kitchen, making them dinner. I clicked to another file. Here's Dad explaining why Emily deserved the trust money more than me. His voice. Emily's got real ambitions, marketing career, social connections. Kiara just does freelance work on her computer. The money will have more impact with Emily. Serena's jaw dropped. They actually said that, about your grandmother's money. Wait, it gets better. I pulled up the bank transfers. Look at the dates. Every time Emily posts about a new purchase, there's a corresponding withdrawal from the trust 3 days earlier. This is insane. How long has this been going on? Since Grandma died, 2 years of treating me like their personal ATM. I opened Emily's Instagram, and here's the kicker. The photo from last night was still up. Emily and Bradley at dinner, her engagement ring catching the restaurant lighting. She's engaged to your ex. Posted it an hour ago. Look at the caption. Serena read aloud. Sometimes the best things come when you least expect them. Bradley proposed with my dream ring. Vintage Cartier, just like I always wanted. Can't wait to start our new life together. That ring cost 12 grand. Guess where the money came from? The trust fund. Bingo! My inheritance bought my cousin an engagement ring to marry my ex-boyfriend. Serena stared at the screen. We're making this video today, right now. We spent the morning editing. Serena handled the technical side while I crafted the narrative. Clean graphics, clear timeline, devastating evidence. The audio clips played over screenshots of the bank transfers. Emily's Instagram posts appeared next to the corresponding withdrawals. What should we call it? Serena asked, uploading the final version. How my family celebrated my birthday. Without me. Perfect. Posting in 3, 2... My phone rang before she hit 1. Unknown number. Miss Allen, this is Deacon O'Connor from O'Connor and Associates. I'm the executor of your grandmother's trust. My stomach dropped. Is everything okay? That's what I'm calling to ask you. I've been reviewing the account activity, and there are some irregularities I'd like to discuss. What kind of irregularities? Large transfers that don't match the documentation I have on file. Your parents submitted requests for educational expenses and medical emergencies, but the amounts seem excessive. Serena was gesturing frantically at her screen. The video had 500 views already. Mr. O'Connor, I think we need to meet, today if possible. I was hoping you'd say that. Can you come to my office this afternoon? And Miss Allen, bring any documentation you might have regarding these transfers. After I hung up, Serena showed me her laptop. Look at this. The view count was climbing rapidly, 1,200 views, comments pouring in. Oh my God, this is my family too. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Your cousin seems like a total narcissist. Is that legal, using someone else's inheritance? This is going viral, Serena said. People are sharing it everywhere. My phone buzzed with notifications. Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. The video was spreading across platforms. Then Mum called. Chiara, what the hell is this video? Take it down right now. Hi, Mum. How was Emily's engagement party? Don't be smart with me. This is humiliating. People are calling me, asking questions. Questions about what? The truth. You're making us look like monsters. We're family, Chiara. Family doesn't air dirty laundry in public. Family doesn't steal from each other either. We never stole anything. That money was for emergencies. Emily's spa weekends were emergencies. Silence. Take down the video, Chiara. I'm not asking. Actually, you are asking, and the answer is no. I hung up and immediately changed all my passwords. Bank accounts, social media, email, everything. Then I called the bank. I need to freeze all joint accounts immediately. Yes, I'll hold. Serena was refreshing the video stats. 5,000 views? This is insane. Mr. O'Connor's office is downtown. Want to come with me? Absolutely. But first, look at this comment. She pointed to her screen. Someone had tagged 3 local news stations and a viral content blogger. This story has legs, the comment read. Someone should investigate this family. My phone rang again. Emily this time. You psychotic bitch, she screamed before I could say hello. How dare you try to ruin my engagement? Bradley's family is asking questions. My boss saw the video. Maybe don't steal from family members if you don't want people to know about it. I never stole anything. That money was freely given. By who? It wasn't Mum and Dad's money to give. You're just jealous because I actually do something with my life instead of hiding behind a computer screen like some pathetic... I hung up and blocked her number. Ready to go see the lawyer? I asked Serena. Let's go get your money back. As we drove downtown, my phone kept buzzing with notifications. The video had hit 8,000 views and counting. All this time, they thought I was too meek to read the fine print. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. Deacon O'Connor's office smelled like leather and old money. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Allen, thank you for coming so quickly. He gestured to the chairs across from his mahogany desk. And you are? Serena, Chiara's roommate and moral support. Good. She'll need it. He opened a thick file folder. I've been your grandmother's attorney for 15 years. Celeste was particular about her wishes. What do you mean? She suspected this might happen. The favoritism, the financial manipulation. She left very specific instructions. He pulled out a sealed envelope. This was to be given to you only if irregularities were discovered in the trust management. My hands shook as I opened it. Grandma Celeste's handwriting, shaky but determined. My dearest Chiara, if you're reading this, it means they've done exactly what I feared. Your mother has always been jealous of what she couldn't control, and Emily has always been her weapon of choice. The trust was meant for you. Every penny. I've left evidence with Deacon. Use it. Don't let them erase you anymore. Love, Grandma. There's more, Deacon said gently. He pulled out a small recording device. She made this 3 months before she died. Grandma's voice filled the room, weaker than I remembered, but absolutely clear. Michaela, I'm telling you one final time. This trust is for Kiara, not Emily, not the family, not your emergencies. Ciara, when I'm gone, you are not to touch a single dollar without her explicit written consent. Mum's voice responded, Mother, you're being dramatic. We're all family here. What's good for one is good for all. What's good for Kiara has never mattered to you. Promise me, Michaela. Fine, I promise. The recording ended. Deacon looked grim. Your mother signed documents swearing she would honour these wishes. Every transfer made without your knowledge violates both the trust terms and her legal obligations. How much are we talking about? Serena asked. The original trust was worth $340,000. Current value, with investments, should be around $425,000. Based on the transfers I've tracked, approximately $78,000 has been moved without proper authorization. I felt dizzy. $78,000? That's just what I can document. There may be more. He handed me another folder. I need you to sign these forms. They'll give you full control of the trust and freeze all current access for other parties. While I signed, my phone buzzed constantly. Serena kept checking the video stats. 15,000 views, she whispered, and someone shared it in a Facebook group called Narcissistic Family Survivors. It's blowing up there. Miss Allen, Deacon continued, there's something else. Your grandmother also left you this house. What house? The family home, where you currently live. It's been in your name since her death, but the paperwork was delayed by your parents. They've been living there as your tenants, essentially. They never told me I owned the house. No, they wouldn't have, but you do, and as the owner, you have every right to make decisions about who lives there. My phone rang. Dad this time. Ciara, sweetheart, we need to talk. This video's getting out of hand. Is it? I think it's just getting started. People are calling your mother's work, asking questions. She might lose her position on the hospital board. That sounds like a consequence. Don't be cruel. We're family. Family doesn't steal $78,000 from their daughter's inheritance. Silence. Then, how did you... We can explain everything. I'm sure you can, but I'm not interested in explanations anymore. I hung up and turned to Deacon. What do I need to do to evict them? Given the circumstances, I'd recommend 30 days' notice, standard tenant eviction process. Do it! Serena grabbed my arm. Ciara, look at this! She showed me her phone. A local news blogger had picked up the story. Viral video exposes family financial abuse when birthday parties become breaking points. They interviewed some family psychology expert, Serena said. She's calling it a textbook case of financial and emotional abuse. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, this is Jessica from Channel 7 News. We'd love to interview you about your viral video. Are you available? Then another. This is Marcus from the Daily Herald. Your story is resonating with our readers. Can we talk? This is insane, I said. Deacon smiled. Your grandmother would be proud. She always said you were stronger than they gave you credit for. Mr. O'Connor, I need to ask you something. Did you know about what they were doing? He looked uncomfortable. I suspected, but I needed proof. Your parents were very careful about the paperwork, very convincing about the emergencies. I should have investigated sooner. But you're helping now. Yes, and there's more help coming. He pulled out another document. I've been in contact with the State Attorney General's office. Financial elder abuse is a serious crime, even when the victim is deceased. They're interested in reviewing the case. Serena's eyes went wide. Criminal charges? Potentially. Depends on what the investigation uncovers. My phone rang again. Emily, calling from a different number. "You need to stop this right now," she sobbed. "Bradley's parents are asking questions about the ring. My boss wants to meet with HR. You're ruining my life." "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just telling the truth." "The truth? The truth is, you're a bitter, jealous loser who can't stand that I'm successful." "Emily, you bought your success with my money. That's not success. That's theft." "It wasn't theft. Your parents gave us that money." "With what authority? It wasn't theirs to give." She was crying now. "Please, Kiara, I'll pay it back. We can work something out." "You're right, we can, through lawyers." I hung up and looked at Deacon. "How long before the eviction notice is served?" "I can have it delivered tomorrow morning." "Perfect." I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Thank you, Mr. O'Connor, for everything." "Thank your grandmother. She set this all in motion." As we walked to the car, Serena checked the video one more time. 22,000 views, and look at this comment. "Update us. We're all rooting for you." Think I should? Absolutely. People are invested now. They want to see justice. I looked at my phone, at all the missed calls and angry texts from my family. Then let's give them a show. The eviction notice was served at 8 a.m. sharp. I watched from my bedroom window as the process server handed the papers to Dad on the front porch. His face went white as he read. My phone started ringing immediately. "Ciara, what have you done?" Mum's voice was shrill. "Eviction? This is our home?" "Actually, it's my home. Has been for 2 years. You just never bothered to tell me." "You can't be serious. Where are we supposed to go?" "I don't know. Maybe Emily can help. She seems to have plenty of money these days." "This is insane. You're destroying the family over money." "No, Mum. You destroyed the family when you decided Emily mattered more than I did. The money just made it obvious." I hung up and checked the video stats. 35,000 views overnight. The comments section had become a support group. My sister did this to me with our dad's estate. This is why I went no contact with my family. Stay strong. You're doing the right thing. Serena emerged from the kitchen with coffee and her laptop. "You need to see this." She'd been monitoring social media all morning. Emily's Instagram was in meltdown mode. 3 posts in the last hour, each more desperate than the last. Family drama is so toxic. Some people just can't be happy for others. When jealousy makes people cruel, praying for healing. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who should love you. "She's not even denying it," Serena said. "She's just playing victim." Look at the comments, though. Emily's usual supporters were notably quiet. Instead, strangers were asking pointed questions. "Is this about that viral video? Did you really use your cousin's inheritance money? That ring looks expensive for someone just starting their career." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, this is Ashley. I went to college with Emily. Can we talk? I have some information you might find interesting." I called the number. "Kiara? Oh my God, thank you for calling. I saw your video and I had to reach out." "What kind of information?" "About Emily's job, the marketing position she's always bragging about. She got fired 3 weeks ago. Falsified her resume, apparently. Claimed she had experience she didn't have. Took credit for campaigns she never worked on." "She got fired?" "Yeah, but she's been pretending she still works there. I only know because my friend works in HR. They're actually considering legal action for some of the stuff she claimed." After I hung up, Serena was staring at her screen with wide eyes. "What now?" "Someone found Emily's LinkedIn. Look at this work history." She'd listed herself as Senior Marketing Director at a company where she'd actually been an unpaid intern. Brand Strategy Consultant for a job that lasted 3 weeks. Creative Campaign Manager for projects that didn't exist. "Her entire professional identity is fake," Serena said, "just like everything else about her." The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a business suit holding a microphone. A cameraman stood behind her. "Channel 7 News," she called out. "We'd love to get your side of the story." I opened the door. "I'm Jessica Martinez. We spoke yesterday?" "Right, come in." The interview lasted an hour. Jessica asked thoughtful questions, let me tell the whole story without interruption. When I played the recording of Grandma Celeste, her eyes filled with tears. "This is incredibly powerful," she said. "When will this air?" "Tonight at 6. We're calling it Birthday Betrayal, a Family's Financial Deception Exposed." After they left, Deacon called. "Miss Allen, I have an update. The Attorney General's office wants to meet with you tomorrow. They're opening a formal investigation." "Into what exactly?" "Financial elder abuse, fraud, potentially identity theft. Using your name on investment accounts without your knowledge could constitute several felonies." "Felonies?" "I'm afraid so. Your parents could face serious charges." I sat down hard. This was bigger than I'd imagined. "There's more?" Deacon continued. "I found another account. Your grandmother had a separate savings account, never mentioned in the will. She left instructions that it should go to you if anything happened to the trust." "How much?" $47,000, untouched." My hands were shaking. She knew, she actually knew they'd try this. Celeste was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. She protected you the only way she could. After we hung up, I sat in Grandma's old chair, my chair now, and looked around the living room. For the first time in years, it felt like home. Serena showed me her phone. The video hit 50,000 views, and look at this. Someone had created a hashtag, Shish Justice for Ciara. People were sharing their own stories of family financial abuse, tagging the video, demanding updates. "You've started something," Serena said. My phone rang. Bradley's name appeared on the screen. "Don't answer it," Serena said. "No, I want to hear this." "Ciara, we need to talk. This whole thing has gotten out of hand." "Has it? Or is it finally in hand for the first time?" "Emily's devastated. She's talking about hurting herself. This needs to stop." "Then maybe she should stop lying and start taking responsibility." "She made mistakes, okay? But she doesn't deserve to have her life destroyed over it." "What about my life, Bradley? Did I deserve to have mine destroyed?" Silence. "The ring," I continued, "the one you proposed with, do you know where the money came from?" "Emily said her parents helped." "My inheritance. You proposed to my cousin with a ring bought with my dead grandmother's money." "I didn't know. Ciara, I swear I didn't know." "But you know now, so what are you going to do about it?" He hung up. 20 minutes later, Emily's Instagram story appeared. A photo of her bare ring finger with the caption, "Sometimes love isn't enough." "Looks like the engagement's off," Serena said. "Good. Maybe now she'll understand what consequences feel like." The evening news was brutal. Jessica had done her homework, interviewing financial abuse experts, showing the bank records, playing Grandma's recording. The story painted a clear picture of systematic theft and emotional manipulation. My phone exploded with notifications. The video views doubled in an hour. But the best message came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbour. "Ciara, I saw the news. Your grandmother would be so proud. She used to tell me you were the strong one, that someday everyone would see it. Looks like someday is today." I smiled, looking at Grandma's photo on the mantel. "She was talking to you," I thought. "All along she was talking to you." The lawsuit papers arrived by courier at 9 a.m. Emily was suing me for defamation, claiming the video contained malicious falsehoods designed to destroy her reputation and career prospects. "She's actually doing this," I said, reading the complaint aloud to Serena. "She wants $100,000 in damages." "For telling the truth?" "Apparently the truth is defamatory now." My phone rang. Deacon sounded amused. "Miss Allen, I assume you've seen Miss Ford's lawsuit?" "Just got it. Should I be worried?" "Not even slightly. In fact, this might be the best thing that could have happened. She's opened herself up to discovery, which means we can subpoena every financial record, every text message, every piece of evidence we need." "So she basically just handed us more ammunition?" "Exactly. I'll file our response today. This case won't last a month." After hanging up, I checked the video stats. 75,000 views and climbing. The news coverage had pushed it into viral territory. But the real surprise was waiting in my email inbox. Dear Ms. Allen, I'm Rebecca Martinez, producer for the podcast Family Secrets Exposed. Your story has resonated with thousands of our listeners. Would you consider doing a full episode about your experience? We'd love to help amplify your message about financial abuse awareness. A podcast. This was getting bigger than I'd ever imagined. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Through the window, I saw Mum standing on the porch with 2 suitcases. Kiara, please, we need to talk. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. The eviction notice says we have 30 days, but we can't stay here, not with all this attention. The reporters won't leave us alone. That sounds like a you problem. Don't be cruel. I'm your mother. Are you? Because mothers don't usually steal from their children and then play victim when they get caught. Her face crumpled. It wasn't stealing. That money was for family emergencies. Emily's shopping sprees were emergencies. You don't understand the pressure we were under. Emily needed help getting established, and you were doing fine on your own. I was doing fine because I was paying for everything. My house, my bills, and apparently Emily's lifestyle too. She's family, Kiara. Family helps family. Then why didn't family help me? When did anyone ever ask what I needed? Mum's voice rose. You never asked for anything. You were always so independent, so closed off. Emily needed us. Emily used you, and you let her because it was easier than actually parenting your own daughter. That's not... She stopped, looking defeated. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. There, are you happy? I don't want your apology, Mom. I want my money back, all of it. We don't have it. Most of it's gone. Then you better figure out how to get it back. I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. Please, Kiara, think about what you're doing. This lawsuit, the news coverage, the investigation. You're destroying our family. No, Mom, you destroyed our family when you decided I didn't matter. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. You're being vindictive. I'm being honest. There's a difference. After she left, I called the podcast producer back. Rebecca, this is Ciara Allen. I'd love to do the interview. The recording session was scheduled for the next day, but first I had to deal with another crisis. Serena burst through the front door, laptop in hand. You need to see this. Emily just posted a response video. She'd uploaded a 20-minute tearful monologue to YouTube. Sitting in what looked like a hotel room, makeup smeared, she told her version of the story. My cousin has always been jealous of me, she sobbed. She's trying to destroy my life because I got engaged and she's still single. The money she's talking about, that was freely given by my aunt and uncle for legitimate expenses, but she's twisting everything to make me look bad. She's doubling down, Serena said, even after being served with the lawsuit. Look at the comments, though. The response was brutal. People weren't buying Emily's victim act. Where are the receipts for these legitimate expenses? If the money was freely given, why didn't you know about the trust? This sounds like Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Your cousin has bank records. What do you have? One comment stood out. I work at the law firm handling this case. Discovery is going to be very interesting. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley, Emily's former college friend. Did you see her video? I have more information. Can we talk? I called her immediately. Ciara, I couldn't stay quiet after seeing that performance. Emily did this same thing in college, stole money from our sorority fund, then played victim when she got caught. She stole from a sorority? $2,000 for a family emergency that turned out to be a spring break trip. When we confronted her, she cried and said we were bullying her. Sound familiar? Very familiar. I have the old emails if you want them. Shows a pattern of behaviour. After we hung up, Deacon called with more news. The Attorney General's office moved quickly. They're freezing all accounts associated with your parents pending the investigation. What does that mean? It means they can't access any money, can't sell any assets, can't make any major financial moves until this is resolved. How long will that take? Months, potentially, but there's more. They found irregularities in your father's business accounts too. Looks like he might have been using company funds to cover some of the family expenses. Company funds? His business partner is cooperating with investigators. Apparently your father's been very creative with expense reports. I sat down hard. This was spiralling beyond anything I'd imagined. Ciara, are you okay with how big this has gotten? I looked around the living room, my living room, and thought about Grandma Celeste's letter, about years of being invisible, dismissed, erased from my own family's story. Yeah, I said finally, I'm okay with it. Good, because tomorrow's podcast is going to reach a lot more people. Are you ready for that? I thought about Emily's fake tears, Mom's non-apology, Dad's creative accounting. I'm ready. One more thing. Your parents want to meet. They're talking about a settlement. Tell them I'll see them in court. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and started typing a response to Emily's video. Not angry, not emotional, just facts. Bank records, dates, amounts. Let the evidence speak for itself. The truth doesn't need tears, I wrote. It just needs documentation. I hit publish and watched the view counter start climbing immediately. They'd made their choice years ago. Now they were living with the consequences, and I was just getting started. The podcast went live on Tuesday morning. By noon, it had been downloaded 50,000 times. Rebecca had done her homework, weaving together my story with expert commentary on financial abuse and family scapegoating. The episode was called The Birthday That Changed Everything, and it was devastating. This is textbook narcissistic family dynamics, the psychologist explained. One child is elevated as the golden child, while the other is systematically devalued. The financial abuse is just another tool of control. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the release. Interview requests, speaking opportunities, even a literary agent asking about book rights. But the call I'd been waiting for came from Deacon at 2 p.m. Ciara, we have a problem, a big one. What now? The investigators found something in your father's business accounts. He's been running a side operation using client information to set up fake investment accounts. What kind of fake accounts? Identity theft. He's been using client names and social security numbers to open accounts, then funneling money through them to hide the source. Some of that money ended up funding Emily's lifestyle. My stomach dropped. How much money are we talking about? Over $200,000. The FBI is involved now. The FBI? Wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering. This is federal territory now. Your father could be looking at serious prison time. I sat down hard. What about Mum? She's claiming ignorance, but her signature is on some of the paperwork. The investigators aren't buying it. After hanging up, I found Serena in the kitchen, laptop open, monitoring the social media explosion. The podcast is everywhere, she said. Twitter, TikTok, Reddit. People are calling it the most satisfying revenge story they've ever heard. It's not revenge anymore. It's a criminal investigation. What do you mean? I told her about Dad's business, the identity theft, the FBI involvement. Her eyes went wide. Holy shit, Ciara, this is huge. This is terrifying. I just wanted them to stop stealing from me. I didn't want to destroy their lives. They destroyed their own lives. You just turned on the lights. My phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Allen, this is Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. I winced at the name, but answered professionally. Yes? We need to speak with you about your father's business activities. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Am I in trouble? No, ma'am, you're a victim, but we need your testimony to build our case. After scheduling the meeting, I checked Emily's social media. Her accounts had gone dark except for one post. Taking a break from social media for my mental health. Thank you to everyone who has supported me during this difficult time. The comments were brutal. Maybe use this time to think about paying back what you stole. Mental health break or damage control? Your cousin is the one who needs support, not you. Then Serena showed me something that made my blood run cold. Look at this LinkedIn post. Emily had updated her profile. Currently exploring new opportunities after a successful tenure in marketing, open to remote work and consulting opportunities. She's job hunting, Serena said, using the same fake credentials that got her fired. Screenshot everything. The FBI needs to see this. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Emergency. Can you call me right now? I dialed immediately. Kiara, Emily just called me. She's completely unhinged. She's talking about disappearing, maybe leaving the country. What? She said the FBI contacted her, that she might be charged as an accessory. She's panicking. Where is she? I don't know, but she mentioned something about Bradley having connections in Canada. She might try to run. I immediately called Agent Chen. Agent Chen, this is Ciara Allen. I think Emily Ford might be planning to flee the country. We're already monitoring her movements. Don't worry, Miss Allen. She's not going anywhere. 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Emily stood on my porch, mascara streaked, hair dishevelled, looking like she hadn't slept in days. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Kiara, 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She collapsed onto my couch, the same spot where she'd held court at her birthday party just weeks ago. This has gone too far, she said. People are calling me a criminal. I lost my job. Bradley won't talk to me, and now the FBI wants to question me. Maybe you should have thought about consequences before you stole from me. I never meant for it to go this far. The money, the lies, it just snowballed. Snowballed? Emily, you've been systematically stealing from me for 2 years. It wasn't stealing. Your parents said it was okay. My parents didn't have the right to give away my inheritance. She started crying, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. I'm scared, Ciara. They're talking about criminal charges. I could go to prison. Then maybe you should get a lawyer instead of coming here. I can't afford a lawyer. I don't have any money. You had my money. I spent it. On what? Everything. The apartment, the clothes, the ring, the trips. I thought I was building a life. I thought if I looked successful enough, I'd become successful. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Emily, you built your entire life on stolen money and lies. What did you think would happen? I thought no one would ever find out. I thought you'd never fight back. Why? Because I was too weak, too pathetic? Because you never stood up for yourself before. You just took it, all of it. The dismissals, the comparisons, being treated like you didn't matter. I thought you'd keep taking it forever. Her honesty was brutal, but it was also liberating. Well, I'm done taking it. Please, Ciara, there has to be something we can work out, some way to fix this. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the golden child who'd tormented me for years, but a scared, desperate woman who'd finally run out of other people's money to spend. Emily, the only way to fix this is to tell the truth, all of it, to the FBI, to the investigators, to everyone. I can't. It would destroy what's left of my life. Your life was built on destroying mine. Maybe it's time for that to end. She stared at me for a long moment, then stood up. You're really going to let them send me to prison? I'm not sending you anywhere. Your choices are sending you there. She walked to the door, then turned back. This was never your family to begin with, she said, voice full of venom. You were always the outsider, the afterthought. At least now everyone knows it. I smiled and shut the door in her face. Then I poured myself a glass of champagne and sat in Grandma's chair, surrounded by the silence of my own home. For the first time in years, the quiet felt like peace instead of loneliness. My birthday wish had finally come true. The FBI meeting lasted 3 hours. Agent Martinez, not Chen thankfully, was thorough but kind, walking me through bank records and forged documents I'd never seen before. Your father created 17 fake investment accounts using stolen client information, she explained. The money moved through these accounts before ending up in your cousin's spending sprees, Very sophisticated operation. How long was this going on? At least 4 years, possibly longer. She slid a document across the table. We'll need you to testify when this goes to trial. What about Emily? She's cooperating now, gave us everything. Bank records, text messages, even recordings of conversations with your parents about the money transfers. Recordings? Apparently she was documenting things too, just in case she needed leverage later. Honour among thieves, as they say. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emily's paranoia had provided the final evidence needed to convict my parents. When I got home, Serena was waiting with champagne and a stack of mail. 3 more interview requests, 2 book deal inquiries, and this. She handed me an envelope with a law firm's return address. Inside was a cheque for $127,000, full restitution from the trust fund, plus interest and penalties. A note from Deacon explained that my parents had liquidated their retirement accounts to pay it back. They actually did it, I said, staring at the cheque. Probably hoping it would help with sentencing, Serena said. Speaking of which, look at this. She showed me her laptop. Local news was running a follow-up story. Family financial fraud case leads to federal charges. Dad's mugshot filled the screen. Mum's was next to it. Both looked older, smaller somehow. Truman Allen faces up to 20 years in federal prison for wire fraud and identity theft, the reporter announced. His wife, Michaela, has been charged as an accessory. Their daughter's viral video, which exposed the family's financial abuse, led to the investigation that uncovered the larger scheme. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Bradley. I wanted you to know I'm testifying against them too. Emily told me everything. I'm sorry for my part in this. You deserved better." I showed Serena the message. "Are you going to respond?" "No point. It's over." The doorbell rang. Mrs. Henderson stood on the porch with a casserole dish and a warm smile. "I thought you might be tired of reporters and lawyers," she said. "Figured you could use some normal food from a normal neighbour." "Thank you, that's really kind. Your grandmother used to make this same recipe. She'd be so proud of you, dear, standing up for yourself the way you did." "I hope so." "Oh, I know so. She used to tell me, that girl's got steel in her spine. Someday everyone's going to see it." Looks like someday arrived. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table with the casserole and my laptop, reading comments on the latest news article. This woman is a hero for exposing financial abuse. Hope her parents get the maximum sentence. Anyone know if she's writing a book? I'd buy it immediately. Update us. What happens next? What happens next? That was the question everyone kept asking. My phone rang. Rebecca from the podcast. "Kiara, I have an offer for you. We want to create a whole series about financial abuse in families. You'd be the host, interviewing other survivors, providing resources and support." A whole series. Think about it. Your story resonated with millions of people. Imagine how many others are out there, dealing with the same thing, feeling alone and powerless. I'd be helping people. You already are. My inbox is flooded with messages from people who watched your video and finally found the courage to stand up to their own families. You started something important. After we hung up, I walked through the house, my house, thinking about Grandma Celeste. Her photos were back on the mantel where they belonged. Her chair sat by the window, worn but comfortable. I pulled out the letter she'd left me and read it again. "Don't let them erase you anymore." Mission accomplished, Grandma. Serena found me there an hour later. "So what's the verdict? Are you doing the podcast series?" "Yeah, I think I am." "Good, you've got a gift for this. Turning pain into purpose." "Is that what I did?" "That's exactly what you did. You took years of abuse and manipulation and turned it into justice. Not just for you, but for everyone watching." My phone buzzed with another message, this one from Ashley. "Emily's moving back in with her parents. Apparently they're all broke now. Karma's a beautiful thing." I smiled and deleted the message without responding. The next morning, I drove to Grandma Celeste's grave. The headstone was simple, elegant, just like she'd been. I placed a single rose on the granite and pulled out the original trust document. the one my parents had hidden from me. "They gave me nothing but invented ways to take," I said aloud, "so I gave them just enough rope to hang themselves." A breeze rustled the trees overhead, and for a moment I could swear I heard her laughing. I folded the document carefully and placed it under the rose. Evidence of their betrayal, but also proof of her love. She'd protected me even from the grave, setting up the dominoes that would eventually fall in perfect sequence. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of their expectations, their dismissals, their casual cruelty, all of it was gone. My phone rang as I reached the parking lot. Another interview request, another opportunity to tell my story, to help someone else find their voice. I answered with a smile. "This is Kiara. How can I help you?" Because that's what this was really about. Not revenge, not even justice, but helping. Turning the worst thing that ever happened to me into the best thing I could do for others. Turns out karma doesn't knock. It slips in with a smile and asks, "Remember me?" And when it's your turn to answer, you better be ready. I was ready. The grass was damp under my bare feet, cool against skin still flushed from the slap. 17 years old, and my entire life was reduced to a single black garbage bag beside me, a crumpled $20 bill, and 2 fives in my pocket. My mother, Isabella, stood on the porch, arms crossed over her pristine silk blouse, her face a mask of disappointment. "You made your choice, Whitney," she'd said, her voice like ice. "No daughter of mine will disgrace this family." You are no longer bride material. Before we continue, drop a comment with where you're watching from. I love seeing my global reach, bride material. That was the phrase that echoed in my head as the front door clicked shut, the sound final, absolute. I'd refused to marry Zane Arnold, a man old enough to be my father, just because he had money, and Isabella thought it would secure her place in the country club hierarchy. My father, Cody, had watched from the living room window, a ghost behind the glass doing nothing. As always, that was 12 years ago. I was 17 then. Now I'm 29. The first few months were a blur of cold nights and empty stomachs. I learned quickly that $14 didn't last long, even when stretched thin with instant noodles and stale bread. My Honda Civic, a beat-up hand-me-down, became my bedroom. The back seat was surprisingly comfortable if you didn't mind the condensation on the windows in the morning. I worked 2 jobs, graveyard shifts at a greasy diner, slinging hash and coffee to truckers and insomniacs, and cleaning offices downtown during the day. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every spare minute, every stolen hour, I spent hunched over library books, then a cheap laptop from a pawn shop, devouring everything I could about real estate. Licenses, regulations, market trends, property law. It was all a foreign language at first, but I was a quick study. Survival was a powerful motivator. I remember one night, curled up in the Civic, the rain drumming against the roof, my stomach growling. I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, but I was reading about property liens. Something clicked. This wasn't just about owning a house, it was about control, about power, about never being discarded again. It took years. Years of saving every single penny, of living on less than nothing, of making sacrifices most people couldn't fathom. I got my real estate license, then my broker's license. I started small, flipping run-down condos no one else wanted, learning the ropes, making mistakes, and learning from them faster. I learned how to negotiate, how to spot a good deal from a mile away, how to play the long game. I built connections, earned trust, and started building an empire, brick by painful brick. When it was time to formalize things, to create a new identity, I didn't hesitate. Whitney Montgomery was dead. Long live W.K. Wolfe. The W for Whitney, of course. The K for karma, a little private joke. And Wolfe, because I had become a predator, sharp-toothed and relentless, operating under a holding company that made me untraceable to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. My life was a constant grind, but it was my grind. I had a penthouse apartment now, not a civic. I ate gourmet meals, not instant noodles, but the hunger, that primal, gnawing hunger for more, for vindication, never left. I'd kept tabs on the Montgomerys, a quiet, almost obsessive habit. Not out of love, but out of a need to know, to track their decline. Then, late one night, a notification popped up on my screen. I was reviewing some auction listings, a routine I'd done thousands of times, but this one stopped me cold. The address. My hands started to shake, a tremor that spread through my entire body. It was impossible. It had to be. But there it was, plain as day. A foreclosure notice, my childhood home. The house where Isabella had told me I wasn't bride material. The house where Cody had stood by and watched me walk away with nothing but a garbage bag. My cursor hovered over the make offer button, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't just a house. It was the beginning of the end for them. And the beginning of my true reclamation. My finger clicked. The click of the mouse was a gunshot in the quiet of my penthouse. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, calculating, planning, the Montgomery house. My house now, or soon to be. The next morning I was on the phone. My offer wasn't just competitive, it was aggressive, all cash, no contingencies, no inspection. I wanted it, and I wanted it fast. There were 2 other cash offers, but mine was higher, cleaner, and I pushed my team to expedite every single piece of paperwork. Within a week, the deal was done. The house was mine. I didn't send movers right away. I needed to see it, needed to feel it. I drove my car, a sleek black sedan that cost more than their entire block, and parked a few houses down out of sight. The Montgomery house. It looked smaller now somehow. The paint was peeling in places. The once manicured lawn was overgrown. It wasn't the grand estate I remembered from my childhood, but a tired, forgotten shell. I watched. It was a Saturday. Isabella, my mother, was directing Cody, my father, as he awkwardly loaded boxes into a beat-up, rusting minivan. She was still wearing her pearls, even while supervising manual labour, but her expensive clothes looked a little too worn, a little too faded. Cody, at 58, looked even more stooped than I remembered. His shoulders slumped under the weight of a cardboard box. He still moved with that same aimless shuffle, always looking like he was waiting for someone else to tell him what to do. Isabella, at 56, was still all sharp angles and imperious gestures, but the air of effortless superiority she once carried was gone, replaced by a brittle desperation. They looked diminished, and a cold satisfaction settled deep in my gut. Just as Cody was struggling with a particularly large box, a white SUV pulled up. Not a luxury model, but certainly newer and shinier than their minivan. Harper. My younger sister, 26 now, stepped out, her face a thundercloud. She was still perfectly coiffed, even in the morning, and I could spot the Chanel logo on her handbag from here. The perfect daughter, the one who'd followed all Isabella's rules, married well, and never caused a ripple. She slammed the car door, her voice carrying across the quiet street as she started yelling at Isabella. I couldn't make out the words, but the anger was palpable. Probably about the mess, the public humiliation of it all. Harper always cared about appearances more than anything. This was my cue. I got out of my car, taking my time. I'd dressed carefully for this. A crisp white button-down, sleeves rolled up to my elbows, dark tailored trousers. No frills, no fuss. Just sharp, professional, and utterly unreadable. I walked slowly, deliberately towards the house. Every step felt like a victory march. The gravel crunched under my boots. The scent of damp earth and stale desperation filled the air. Isabella and Cody froze, mid-load, their heads snapping up. Harper stopped mid-rant, her eyes narrowing as she looked at me, a stranger approaching their property. For a moment they didn't recognise me. 12 years had changed me. The skinny, scared kid was gone. In her place stood W.K. Wolfe. I reached the edge of the lawn, the same lawn where I'd been exiled. Isabella's eyes, once so dismissive, now scanned my face, searching. A flicker of something, confusion, then dawning horror, crossed her features. Her mouth opened, a silent gasp. Cody dropped the box he was holding, scattering old photo albums across the driveway. Harper just stared, her perfect face slack with disbelief. Isabella's eyes widened, fixing on my face, then dropping to the envelope I held in my hand. Her knees buckled, she crumpled to the ground, a theatrical sigh escaping her lips. Cody rushed to her side, uselessly flapping his hands. I didn't move. I just stood there watching her, the eviction notice clutched in my hand. Then I let it fall to the overgrown grass beside her. "Bride material enough for you now?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Isabella's faint was predictably a performance. Cody, bless his useless heart, flapped his hands over her, calling her name in a reedy voice. Harper, meanwhile, was already on her phone, probably calling her husband to complain about the sudden drama. I watched, unmoving, as Isabella slowly, dramatically came to. Her eyes fluttered open, fixing on me with a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. "Whitney," she whispered, her voice cracking. "My baby girl." "Is that really you?" The sudden shift from icy contempt to tearful maternal affection was jarring, but I'd seen it 1,000 times. It was her go-to move when she wanted something. I said nothing, just let her lie there on the damp grass, the crumpled eviction, notice a stark contrast against her perfectly manicured hand. Cody, ever the enabler, finally found his voice. "Whitney, please, what is this? A joke?" You can't do this to us." He looked at me, his eyes pleading, but there was no real conviction there, just weakness. Harper finally put her phone down, her face contorted in a sneer. "What is your problem, Whitney? Are you seriously trying to ruin us? After all these years, you just show up to gloat?" "Gloating implies I'm enjoying this," I said, my voice flat. "This is business." Isabella pushed herself up, leaning heavily on Cody. "Business? Darling, this is your family home. Where you grew up. How could you be so cruel?" The tears started to flow. Real or not, I didn't care. "We made a mistake, sweetheart. We were so worried about you, out there on your own. But look at you now, so successful. We're so proud." Cody nodded vigorously. "Yes, so proud, Whitney. You've done so well. If we had known, maybe we could work something out. I could mow the lawn for you." Keep the place up. The absurdity of it, a man who couldn't even stand up for his own daughter offering to mow her lawn, almost made me laugh. Harper, meanwhile, was still fuming. "This is pathetic, Mom. She just wants to hurt us. She always did." "You think I want to hurt you?" I asked, my gaze locking onto Harper. "You think this is about some petty revenge?" "What else could it be?" Harper challenged, her eyes flashing. "You were always so ungrateful, so selfish. You never cared about anyone but yourself." "Ungrateful?" The word hung in the air, a bitter echo. It was the same word Isabella had used, the same word Zane Arnold's lawyers had whispered in the local papers when they tried to discredit me after I refused him. Ungrateful. Something clicked in my mind, a memory from years ago, a phone call I'd overheard Harper making, giggling to a friend about how I was so ungrateful for the life Isabella had planned for me. It had seemed like typical Harper gossip then. Now it was a cold, hard piece of a puzzle. Harper. She'd been the one. She'd poisoned the well, told Zane Arnold's people I was ungrateful, setting the stage for the smear campaigns that followed. The perfect daughter, always ready to stab her sister in the back to secure her own position. "You know," I said, my voice dangerously soft, "I almost felt a flicker of pity for you all. Almost. But then I remember things. Little details. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Like how the mortgage default wasn't just bad investments, was it, Isabella? Or Cody? My eyes flicked to Harper. It was also the sudden, unexplained withdrawals, the large sums of money gone after a certain messy divorce. Your messy divorce, Harper. Harper's face went white. Isabella gasped, looking from me to Harper, a dawning realization on her own face. Cody just looked confused. You took money from them, didn't you, Harper? I pressed, my voice gaining a razor edge. When your husband left you and you needed to maintain that lifestyle, you bled them dry. That's why the house went into foreclosure. Not just bad luck, not just my cruelty. It was your own sister, Mum, your perfect daughter. Harper sputtered. That's a lie. You don't know anything. I know everything, I countered. I own this house. I own all the paperwork that came with it. And it's all there. Isabella sank back onto the grass, truly defeated this time, her theatrical tears replaced by genuine shock. Cody just stared at Harper, a flicker of something new in his eyes, not just weakness, but betrayal. So no, I continued, looking directly at Isabella. No deals, no pity. You wanted to know what I was after? I'm after what's mine, and what's yours too. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Or I call the sheriff. I turned to walk away, the silence behind me heavy with their shock. Then my phone buzzed. It was Jolie, my loyal assistant, my only confidant. I answered, keeping my voice low. Hey, boss, Jolie's voice was crisp. I just finished digging through those property acquisition files you flagged, the ones for the Montgomery place. Something weird popped up. There's a document, a loan agreement from a few months back, tying Eastern Homes to a significant sum that went into the Montgomerys' account right before the foreclosure process started. It looks like he fronted them some cash, then pulled out, triggering the default. My steps faltered. Eastern Homes, a rival investor, ruthless and connected. I'd crossed paths with him on a few deals, always ending up on opposite sides. This wasn't just a random foreclosure. Coincidence, I muttered, more to myself than to Jolie, or setup. Given Easton's reputation and the timing, Jolie replied, her voice grim. I'm leaning heavily towards setup. Jolie's revelation about Eastern Homes gnawed at me. A business rival, sure, but why would he get involved in my family's foreclosure? It felt too personal, too pointed. I tucked the information away, a new piece in the puzzle, but the Montgomerys had a more immediate deadline. 48 hours. The next few days were a whirlwind. Beyond the Montgomery drama, I was juggling another major property acquisition, a commercial building downtown that was crucial for expanding my portfolio. But everything seemed to be hitting snags. Legal documents were delayed, permits mysteriously held up, and I could feel the pressure mounting. It felt like someone was deliberately obstructing me. I called Adrian Wolfe, my ex and current business attorney. He was the best, sharp and ruthless, exactly what I needed. He's 31 now, 2 years older than me. We'd met years ago, back when I was still struggling, and he'd been drawn to my drive. For a while, we were good, a power couple in the making, but my ambition had always burned hotter than his desire for a quiet life. He'd left, saying he couldn't keep up, that I was changing into someone he didn't recognize. He was right. I had changed. I had to. Whitney, Adrian said, his voice calm, almost too calm, when I finally got him on the phone. We need to talk about these delays. They're not random. Someone is actively trying to block your acquisition. I know, I said, my voice tight. I'm looking into it. Just get it done, Adrian. It's more than just a standard legal battle, Whitney. What are you really after? His question hung in the air, loaded with history. He knew me too well, or at least the person I used to be. What I'm always after, Adrian, I replied, my tone deliberately cold. Profit, leverage, don't get sentimental on me, just do your job. He sighed, a sound that spoke volumes. Fine, but be careful. You're making enemies. I brushed off his concerns. Enemies were just a sign you were doing something right. The Montgomerys, true to form, didn't vacate within the 48 hours. I had the sheriff's office on standby, but I didn't need them. Harper, in her infinite wisdom, decided to take matters into her own hands. It happened late that night, around 2 a.m. My security system, installed the moment I owned the house, pinged my phone. Motion detected in the living room. I didn't hesitate. I drove over, arriving just as a patrol car was pulling up. Harper was inside, illuminated by the beam of a flashlight, frantically stuffing silver picture frames and old porcelain figurines into a duffel bag. She looked wild, her hair dishevelled, her expensive clothes rumpled. Isabella and Cody were nowhere in sight. She was alone. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence of the empty house. She jumped, startled, dropping a small, ornate clock. It shattered on the hardwood floor. "Whitney, this is my stuff, my heirlooms. You can't just take everything." "Legally, Harper, I can," I said, stepping further into the room. "Everything in this house is now mine." "You had your chance to move it. You chose not to." A police officer stepped in, assessing the scene. Harper started to cry, real tears this time, not Isabella's theatrical ones. "She's stealing from us. She's always hated me." "She's trespassing, officer," I stated calmly, pointing to the broken clock, "and destroying property." The officer looked at me, then at Harper, then at the duffel bag overflowing with items. It was an open and shut case. Harper was arrested, handcuffed, and led out of the house, still sobbing and protesting. I followed them to the station. The booking process was slow, tedious. Harper sat in a holding cell, glaring at me through the bars, her face blotchy and red. I watched her, feeling nothing, no triumph, no pity, just a strange, hollow emptiness. Then a thought occurred to me, a different kind of message. When the officer finally asked if I wanted to press charges, I paused. Harper looked up, her eyes wide with a desperate hope. "No," I said, surprising even myself. "I'll drop them." The officer looked at me, then at Harper, a flicker of confusion on his face. Harper's face crumpled in relief, then hardened back into suspicion. I walked over to the bars, my voice low, just for her. "This is what mercy feels like, Harper," I whispered, my eyes unblinking. "You get one taste, don't expect another." I turned and walked out, leaving her there stunned. It wasn't mercy, not really. It was a calculated move, a psychological blow. Let her think she'd been spared, then yank the rug out from under her later. It was far more effective than a night in jail. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I saw a familiar figure across the street, talking on a burner phone. Jesse Salazar, the opportunistic real estate agent who'd filed the foreclosure. He was looking at me, then quickly looked away, his hand going to his ear. He spoke into the phone, his voice too low to hear clearly, but one phrase drifted on the wind, distinct and chilling. "She doesn't know you're the one who fronted the bid." Jesse Salazar's hushed words, "She doesn't know you're the one who fronted the bid," echoed in my mind as I drove away from the police station. You, not Eastern Holmes, as Jolie's initial intel suggested. Someone else, someone who had a reason to hide their involvement. My list of suspects was short, but the implications were vast. This wasn't just about the Montgomerys anymore. This was a deeper game. The next few days were a blur of high-stakes negotiations and legal skirmishes. The commercial building acquisition was still being deliberately obstructed. Adrian was working tirelessly, but even he was hitting walls. "This is beyond typical corporate manoeuvring, Whitney," Adrian said during one of our calls. "Someone is actively trying to cripple your operations. They're targeting you specifically." He was right, and I had a good idea who. Eastern Holmes. The pieces were starting to fit. The loan to the Montgomerys, the sudden pullout, the obstruction of my current deal. It all pointed to him. But why? My mind drifted back to Adrian. He was right about me changing. Years ago, when we were together, he'd loved the fire in me, the ambition. But then it became all-consuming. I remembered the night he left. We were in my first real apartment, a small place I'd bought after my first successful flip. I was 23, already working 70-hour weeks, fueled by caffeine and a relentless drive. He was 25, fresh out of law school, full of idealism. "Whitney," he'd said, his voice soft, almost pleading. "We never see each other. When we do, you're talking about deals, numbers, leverage." "Where's the girl I fell in love with?" "She's right here, Adrian," I'd replied, my voice sharper than I intended. "She's building something real, something that means I'll never be homeless again." "But at what cost?" he'd asked, his eyes filled with a pain I hadn't understood then. "You're becoming so hard. Your hunger for control, for power, it's eclipsing everything else. It's eclipsing us." I hadn't argued. Couldn't. He was right. Love felt like a weakness, a distraction. I needed to be impenetrable. So he left, and I let him. I told myself it was for the best. Now Easton Holmes finally showed his hand. He called me directly, bypassing my assistant, his voice smooth, confident. "W.K. Wolfe, I've been looking forward to this conversation." "What do you want, Easton?" I cut to the chase. "Just a little chat about your recent acquisitions and your past." He chuckled, a low, unpleasant sound. "Turns out your old friend Zane Arnold has a long memory and a lot of money. He contracted me a while back to do a little digging, to ensure you didn't forget your place." My blood ran cold. Zane Arnold, the man I'd refused to marry, the reason I was exiled. He was still out there, still holding a grudge, still trying to control my life. "You helped him leak my personal data? Obstruct my deals?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Just a little nudge," Easton purred, "a reminder." "And now, a proposition. You're overextended, Whitney. This commercial property, the Montgomery house. You're vulnerable. Merge with me, share your portfolio, your contacts, or I'll burn your empire to the ground, piece by piece, starting with that commercial building." He was serious. He had the power, the connections, and clearly the motivation from Zane Arnold. This wasn't just about money for him. It was about proving a point. My empire, built on grit and sacrifice, was suddenly under siege. The legal battle for the commercial building intensified. Easton's lawyers were relentless. I was losing ground, bleeding money. Then Adrian stepped in, unbidden. He confronted Easton in court, not just as my attorney, but with a ferocity I hadn't seen since our early days. He argued, he cited case law, he exposed Easton's questionable tactics with a precision that was breathtaking. He tore apart Easton's arguments, revealing the malicious intent behind the obstruction. The judge, clearly swayed, granted a restrictive order against Easton, forcing him to cease his interference. It was a lifeline, a reprieve. Afterward, in the hushed hallway, Adrian turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "That was a close one, Whitney. You almost lost everything." "You saved it," I admitted, a rare concession. "I did," he agreed, his gaze unwavering. "Now, your turn. Be honest with me. Do you feel anything anymore for any of it? For them? For us?" His question hit me harder than any of Easton's threats. I looked at him, the man who had loved me, who still perhaps cared enough to fight for me. I wanted to answer, to tell him something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. My armour was too thick. I just stared, my face a blank mask. Later that night, back in my penthouse, I was sifting through the few boxes of personal items I'd allowed myself to keep from my old life. Mostly old-school papers, a few worn books. I found a small, velvet-covered keepsake box I hadn't opened in years. Inside, tucked beneath a faded photograph of my grandmother, was a letter. Her handwriting, shaky but clear. I hadn't remembered it. My dearest Whitney, it began. I know they don't understand you. They never will. They were never going to love the girl you are, but they cannot unmake the woman you'll become. Be strong, my darling. Be true to yourself. You are enough. I read it again, the words a balm and a sting. My grandmother, the only one who had ever truly seen me. The letter was dated just a few weeks before she passed away, when I was 15, 2 years before the exile, before I became W.K. Wolfe, the woman I'd become. Was she right? Had I become her? And was she enough? My grandmother's letter, hidden for so long, felt like a whisper from the past, a reminder of the girl I was before the world hardened me. They were never going to love the girl you are, but they cannot unmake the woman you'll become. The words resonated, a strange comfort in the chaos. With Eastern homes temporarily neutralised thanks to Adrian, I had breathing room and a plan, a final, public, undeniable blow to the Montgomerys. I called a press conference. Not a big one, just local news outlets and a few community leaders. I stood on the steps of my former childhood home, the very house where I'd been cast out. The house that Isabella had considered her ultimate status symbol. This property, I announced, my voice clear and steady, will no longer be a symbol of exclusivity or a monument to a single family's pride. As of today, W.K. Wolfe Holdings is dedicating this house to a new purpose. I paused, letting the anticipation build. We are converting it into a transitional housing project for young women aging out of foster care. A safe space. A place where they can find stability, education, and the support they need to build their own futures. A place where they can become the women they were meant to be, without judgment or conditions. The murmurs from the crowd were immediate. Shock, then approval. It was a direct hit, not just financially, but ideologically. Isabella's entire life was built on appearances, on maintaining a facade of upper-class respectability. Turning her former trophy home into a shelter for vulnerable girls was the ultimate affront to her carefully constructed world. It was a public declaration that their values were not mine. The fallout was swift. Isabella, predictably, showed up a few days later, not at the house, but at my office, somehow having bypassed security. She looked frail, leaning heavily on a cane, her face pale, 56 years old, and she looked 80. "Whitney," she croaked, her voice weak. "My darling." "You must listen to me. I'm not well. The doctors say it's terminal, a rare form of something. I don't have much time left." Her eyes, however, were sharp, calculating. She was still trying to guilt me, to manipulate me with a sob story. Terminal illness, right, the same woman who'd faked a sprained ankle to get out of charity work. "What do you want, Isabella?" I asked, my voice devoid of sympathy. "Just a guest house, darling, a small place, or perhaps a room in the shelter." I could help, be a mentor, just a little corner to spend my final days." She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "No," I said flatly. "You made your bed, and you're not dying. Not yet, anyway. You're just trying to get back in. It won't work." Her eyes flashed with a momentary fury before she reverted to her frail act. "How can you be so heartless, after everything?" "I'm your mother." "You stopped being my mother the day you threw me out with a garbage bag and $14, I retorted, my voice cold. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do." She left, defeated, her cane tapping a slow, angry rhythm down the hall. The next blow came from Harper. Her husband, it turned out, had finally discovered her financial misdeeds. The money she'd taken from Isabella and Cody, the extravagant spending that had led to their foreclosure, it all came out during their divorce proceedings. He left her, taking everything. Harper, now truly desperate, found me at the old house, overseeing some renovations. She stormed in, her face contorted with rage, her perfect hair dishevelled. "You! This is all your fault!" she shrieked, lunging at me. She tried to scratch my face, her nails tearing at my sleeve. I sidestepped her easily, grabbing her wrists, my grip like iron. "Get your hands off me," I warned, my voice low and dangerous. "You ruined my life. You told him. You always hated me," she screamed, struggling against my hold. "I didn't tell him anything, Harper," I said, releasing her wrists with a shove that sent her stumbling back. "Your own actions did, your own greed, your own lies. You did this to yourself. Just like you did this to Mom and Dad." She collapsed onto a pile of dust sheets, sobbing uncontrollably. The tears were real this time, born of true desperation. But still, I felt nothing. Later that day, Cody showed up, alone. He looked smaller than ever, his spirit utterly broken. He just stood there, watching the construction workers, watching the house transform. "Whitney," he said, his voice raspy, barely a whisper. "Can you truly sleep knowing how cold you've become?" His words, quiet and sincere, were the only ones that gave me pause. Not Isabella's theatrics, not Harper's rage, just Cody's simple, broken question. For a fleeting moment, a crack appeared in my armour. Had I become too cold? Had the fire of revenge consumed everything else? I didn't answer him. I couldn't. That night, back in my penthouse, Jolie finally confessed. She'd been quiet, almost withdrawn, since the Eastern Home's revelation. "Boss," she started, her voice hesitant, "I've been doing some more digging on Jesse Salazar, and it's worse than we thought. He wasn't just reporting to Eastern, he was being paid by Isabella." My blood ran cold. "Isabella? My mother?" Jolie nodded, her face grim. "She hired him months ago, before the foreclosure even started. She knew the house was in trouble. She wanted it to go into foreclosure. She wanted you to buy it. The whole thing, Whitney. It may have been orchestrated. A trap. To draw you back." Jolie's confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Isabella, my own mother, orchestrating the foreclosure, paying Jesse Salazar, all to lure me back. It wasn't just about reclaiming the house, it was about reclaiming me. A twisted, manipulative game designed to pull me back into their orbit, back into a position where she could control me. The terminal illness act, the pleas for mercy, it was all part of the trap. The audacity of it, the sheer calculated cruelty, made my blood run cold. "Are you sure, Jolie?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I have the receipts, boss," she said, her face grim. Payments from a shell company linked directly to Isabella's offshore accounts. Regular payments to Salazar detailing market intelligence and property acquisition assistance. It's all there. She wanted you to buy it. She wanted you to come back. The anger that surged through me was a cold, hard flame. Not the hot, blinding rage of my youth, but a controlled, precise burn. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about severing the last invisible threads that tied me to them. I called Isabella. She answered on the second ring, her voice surprisingly strong. "Whitney, darling, I was just thinking of you. Did you reconsider my offer for a guest room?" "I know, Isabella," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I know about Jesse Salazar. I know about the shell company. I know you orchestrated the foreclosure. I know you wanted me to buy the house. I know you wanted to draw me back into your little web." Silence. A long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then a low, guttural laugh. It wasn't the theatrical laugh she used for company. It was raw, unhinged. "And what if I did, Whitney?" she finally said, her voice dripping with venom, the pretense of frailty completely gone. "What if I wanted to see if you still had a shred of family loyalty left?" to see if you'd finally come to your senses and realize where you belong. I belong exactly where I am, I countered, far away from you. You didn't want me back because you missed me. You wanted me back because you lost control, because you couldn't stand the idea of me succeeding without you, outside your influence. You were never born to be loved, Whitney, she spat, her voice rising to a shriek. You were born to prove something, to prove you were better than us. To prove you could survive without us, and you did. But you're still empty, aren't you? You're still that ungrateful, selfish child who threw away everything for pride. Then I'll prove it right now, I said, my voice steady, my resolve ironclad. I'll prove I can survive without you, and I'll prove how much I don't need your love. I hung up. No more words, no more arguments, just action. I immediately called my most trusted lawyer, not Adrian this time, but a specialist in family law and asset protection. I instructed him to draft permanent restraining orders against Isabella, Cody, and Harper. Not just from the house, but from my person, my businesses, my life. I wanted a legal wall between us, impenetrable and absolute. I also initiated a full audit of all my accounts, all my holdings, to ensure no hidden ties, no lingering financial connections, no way for them to ever touch my empire again. Every channel, every potential link severed. The next day, it was done. The Montgomerys, now truly homeless, were packing the last of their belongings into the rusting minivan. Harper, her face swollen from crying, was arguing with Cody, who looked utterly defeated. Isabella stood apart, watching the sheriff's deputies supervise the final eviction, her face a mask of bitter fury. I stood on the front porch, the keys to the house loose in my hand, the same porch where I'd been discarded with a garbage bag. I watched them, their pathetic minivan pulling away, disappearing down the street. They didn't look back, and I felt nothing, then too much. The emptiness that had been my constant companion for so long suddenly felt overwhelming. The revenge was complete, the house was mine, they were gone, and I was alone. I walked inside, the silence of the empty house echoing around me. I went straight to my childhood bedroom, now stripped bare, ready for renovation. It would be my office in the new shelter, my sanctuary. On the floor near the window, I spotted a small crumpled piece of paper. It was an old engagement photo. Harper had faked it years ago. A cruel prank after I refused Zane Arnold, sending it to my few remaining friends, claiming I'd secretly married him and was living a life of luxury. It was meant to humiliate me, to make me feel like a fool for choosing exile. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the smiling fake faces, and then the emotional closure hit me like a train. Not triumph, not joy, just a profound aching release. The battle was over. The war was won, but the scars remained. And for the first time in 12 years, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of it all. The pain, the betrayal, the crushing loneliness of a life built on the ruins of a discarded past. 6 months later, the scent of fresh paint and baking bread filled the air of what used to be the Montgomery family home. The renovations were complete, and the house was buzzing with life. It was no longer a monument to my family's pride, but a vibrant, bustling shelter. Girls, ranging from 16 to 21, moved through the hallways, their laughter echoing where Isabella's stern pronouncements once reigned. Each room, once filled with my family's carefully curated, expensive clutter, now held bunk beds, study desks, and bulletin boards covered in drawings and inspirational quotes. I was in what used to be the formal dining room, now a communal kitchen, when a young woman, maybe 18, with bright eyes and a shy smile approached me. Her name was Maya, and she'd been with us for 3 months. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "For you, Ms. Wolfe," she mumbled, looking at her feet. I unfolded the paper. It was a hand-drawn card, simple but heartfelt. a stick figure drawing of a house with a sun smiling down on it. Inside, scrawled in crayon, were the words, "Thanks for making space for girls like me. It's a real home." A warmth spread through my chest, unfamiliar and profound. It wasn't the cold satisfaction of revenge. It was something softer, something that settled deep in my bones. This was the real victory. Later that week, I met Jolie for coffee. She was 30 now, and still my rock. We talked business as always, but for the first time in a long time the conversation drifted. We talked about silly things, about old memories from our diner days. I found myself laughing, a genuine, unforced sound that surprised even me. It wasn't a bitter laugh, not laced with sarcasm or resentment. It was just laughter. "You're different, boss," Jolie observed, a soft smile on her face. "Lighter." I shrugged, looking out the window. Maybe it's quiet now. The Montgomerys were gone, the restraining orders held. Their lives were no longer my concern. I hadn't heard a whisper about them, and I hadn't sought one out. A few days after that, an email popped up in my inbox. It was from Adrian. No subject line. Just a few sentences. "Whitney, heard about the shelter. It's incredible what you've done. Truly, you always had a vision. Proud of you. Adrian, no request for a meeting, no attempt to rekindle anything, just a quiet acknowledgement. It was exactly what I needed. A confirmation that the person I had become, the woman I had fought so hard to be, was seen and respected. Not loved, perhaps, in the way he once had, but understood. And that was enough." I remembered a moment from my childhood, a whisper I'd often repeated to myself in the dark, after Isabella's latest critique, after Cody's latest silence. "I'll never be enough for them." The words had been a constant refrain, a deep-seated fear that had driven me, hardened me. Now, sitting in the quiet of my new master bedroom, a room I'd chosen on the second floor of the old house, overlooking the backyard, I finally whispered the answer. "I know." I knew. And it didn't matter anymore. Their judgment, their expectations, their conditional love, none of it could touch me now. I had built my own worth, on my own terms. The windows were cracked, letting in the cool night air. I could hear the wind rustling through the old oak trees in the backyard. The same trees my mother had always complained about, saying their unruly branches would shame them, drop leaves on the perfectly manicured lawn, ruin the aesthetic. She'd wanted them cut down, replaced with something more refined, but I'd always loved them, their ancient strength, their stubborn refusal to conform. Now those branches whispered in the breeze, a lullaby of resilience. This house finally belonged to someone who knew how to survive fire.